Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
SyncTank.
Terragar is dead, dude. It's a bummer. I'm like in a bad mood about it. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. I was like, you can worry about America and the free world collapsing all you want. I'm taking the day. Taking the day to just grieve. She's in every good movie. Like all of them. You know what I mean? Mom and Dad Save the World. Miracles 1986. I don't know.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The Conversation.
Yeah, we're gonna get into the really good
Dumb and
movies that
Dumber?
people have actually seen, but I just wanted to
Did you
start
just
with-
sneak Dumb and Dumber in there, or is that
Yeah,
a real one?
She is. Apparently, I don't know when. I gotta look this
the
up.
heck is she in Dumb and Dumber? I don't
I don't
remember
know.
that.
That's so weird. I don't remember.
That's pretty wild right there. Well, so the singularity is imminent, like Omega Point is converging. Hail Eris, hail Bacchus. Let's see. Let's go through a little bit of that news first. Let's start with like a good old political piece. Why not? This was usually how we'd end, but I feel like since it's so pressing, we could begin with this, right? RFK has been trying to make some, sway and some movement here. It's been amazing to hear. Even my mom will have a conversation on the YouTube, not on Zoom or something with some doctors or whatever and friends, and I'll walk by and I'll hear the lady in the call saying, "How could you trust these Blackwater, neoliberals and Kamala Harris prosecutors and everything like that?" And I just saw Bernie put out that video today. I know I'm ranting a lot. It's crazy.
Do it.
Yeah, well, just the Bernie video was weird because it's in what you talk about, the sheepdog thing. His video's titled Bernie. Have you seen Bernie Sanders' new video? It's titled like how I can disagree with these policies and still vote for her.
Yeah.
What the everlasting quack?
Yeah, as a quote unquote independent who ran as a Democrat, who's always supposedly been an independent, it's so insane. Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, I want to get the title properly just because I disagree with Kamala's position on the war in Gaza. How can I vote for her? Here is my answer. It's like a Mr. Beast title for a video. It just blows my mind. It's like
Here is how I.
It's my question: is this what a heart attack gun can accomplish? Is this what does that to somebody?
It's my job.
Every candidate support that though. Doesn't every candidate either directly or indirectly support continued war?
It depends. I mean, I think that the idea that Israel. I mean, so
depending on how you interpret it,
Vance has been gaslighting
Well, if you give them
everybody
money,
by
knowing
saying
that the money goes to violence, state-sanctioned violence, right?
Mythoclast, you're just so sexy. Thank you very much.
And we will be donating those memberships to the war in Gaza as well.
That's true. No, but so what's cool is that Vance is saying kind of what we've talked about. It's a brain drain and a tech dump to get all of these countries to put their resources into a landfill in Ukraine. But also, we're not at war. You know, whenever there's well, we're at war with Ukraine, Vance is like, well, we're not at war with Ukraine, which is very America pre-World War II, you know, like before we got
But
into
the
it.
ulterior motives aren't really part of the conversation as far as like mainstream media is concerned. So there's been very little discussion around any of these things. Like I actually feel really similarly in a weird way with what happened with Bernie Sanders and what has existed between Netanyahu and Hamas, because and Donald Trump. Because when you look at that group email from John Podesta to the DNC outlining the 2016 strategy, where they refer to Trump as a Pied Piper candidate that they will direct, that's one of the why that's a smoking gun, is because what that indicates is that the DNC was in fact admittedly directing the mainstream media in 2016 to substantiate Trump as a viable candidate, and they wanted somebody extreme enough. Ted Cruz was another option, as stated in that email, that they could continually point at and say, look how extreme this person is, to make themselves look better. So he's a selection from the DNC, because they don't want the possibility of having somebody that actually makes, you know, that is a legit, you know, I mean, that's why Hillary said over and over again I don't think
you can really reduce his presidency to that. You know, because
no, you can. It's such a huge factor that's not spoken to enough, and this was part of their strategy. And so after 2016, all those times when you have Hillary Clinton saying he's an illegitimate president, that's why she thought that, because she was like, she didn't think, she was so arrogant, and so was Soros and all these people in their treatment of it. They thought that there's no way that he could end up in there. That's why they felt that he was the ideal candidate for him.
There's a bonus there too, because he took some of that stink off of Hillary being the original one that started the whole like birther thing, and now that's almost singularly attributed to Donald Trump or Sheriff Arpaio. But she was the one that really initially floated that idea out there, and I almost feel that Trump, like, she used that to also like, oh no, he did that. It was a great way to like rub the crap off the bottom.
She was friends with Trump at that time,
and so was Bill. In Q speak, the phrase is she was never meant to lose, and so. Yeah, I kind of feel that's true.
But I mean,
what's the gematria on that phrase?
I said something to my mom earlier. I was like, I don't know.
Pull up a cold decode here.
I wasn't sure if it was an attack or a compliment. And I was telling my mom, as I said, like, I'm not sure if you're gonna like me saying this or not. But it's like all of my friends were very, very different people, all completely different, and we're not necessarily aligned in our beliefs. We have very different beliefs, you know, and reactionarily to each other, we change our minds of things. But it's interesting because we're all coming from mothers, and on mothers, I think a lot of us have similarly like mothers that are kind of into win-win situations, communication as a solution. These are things that our moms like were really all about.
What?
And how I don't know about yours. Yeah, I'm sorry. But my mom was, and so it's weird to hear to see how dynamic and diverse the supporters, and really it's the, you know, the enemy, my enemy is my friend logic here, because so many weird people that you wouldn't associate with Trump. I mean, like, it's when people say he's a fascistic character, it's very pluribus unum. Out of 12 different zodiac universes, a 13th Ophiuchus reality is emerging, where this is like the collective. I mean, you've got black Nazis, Jewish Nazis. It's crazy, right? Like, how is this happening?
But that's a great example, though, of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, because that's, you can't say that on one side and then turn around and be like, and I can't believe the Vatican teamed up with the Nazis. It's like the exact same argument on both sides. I wish everything was just a little bit more honest. Like, you didn't have to dress it up in like the political talk, where it's like, yeah, that's exactly how it does work. But also that's how you've got like the Pope, you know, chilling and smoking blunts with basically Hitler at certain points, and creating the rat lines and going to South America. I won't go into that whole tangent.
I get really, you can. I'm really kind of mostly frustrated that this only, I mean, I like the amount of likes and shares I got, but such a weirdly low amount of views to say in order to defeat Nazism, she had to become Nazism, right?
That's the tagline, right? That's like the $1 million tagline.
Like, who dressed her? Who put that
I liked it. I liked it. I don't know. It doesn't look like Hugo Boss. I feel like they could have done better. But this is still freaking last night. This is Kamala last night, right? This is last night. She said,
"Is Hitler wearing camel hair?" No.
Looks like but that would be cool.
Well, yeah. What do you think thread count we're working with here on both sides?
She's definitely got a higher thread count. I don't know. I wouldn't say she's got
Where's
like
even
12.
thread?
Is this like 600? No, this is definitely a fabric. This is probably like 600 to maybe 1,000 thread count. He's probably like 300.
This feels
in,
like it could be
linen.
fleece. You know what I mean? Like
His
that's
is
I
like
want to withhold my opinion on which one is more stylish, but it wouldn't win me any views on either
you like.
side.
I
don't
get
think.
that you like pockets. I get it, but I think zippers are a
It
little
is
flashy.
like
he's
zippers.
wearing
I'm like,
cargo
I'm-
shorts on his chest. This is
You gotta admit, it's like a utility kill, but it's also hemp, right? That's the coolest thing about it. Like he's pro hemp, and I think that's the. Well, okay, so but this is weird. This is weird to me because you get to a point where they're constantly saying everything is one way, and when that's not working anymore, you just become the thing you hate, or what is it exactly? Because they're so fetishistically, what would you say? Fetish obsession. They have a fetish-like obsession with these ideas, sexual, perverse nightmare level obsession, erotic level of obsession with the Nazis. And here, like, now she's dressed like them. Is that just because they have to at some point absorb?
I mean, wasn't that the criticism that Obama got was for his beige suit was just like the most offensive thing in his presidency somehow?
I
It was
just
more
feel
offensive
like
than
All
drones.
really
Did you ever-
superficial as everything.
Did you ever
is.
have a goldfish in a bag driving down a dirt road, and the fish is fine, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what it feels like they're doing here.
Well,
It-
that's relative because I think the fact that it's in a bag in your hand as you're driving means that it's maybe not okay.
Bro, I'm from California. You can't take that side. That's like the Free
I
Willy's
just
thing.
before we even move on to the million tangents we're going to go on, I do want to say that the same way that it seems silly and ridiculous and sad to me that Hitler doing what he did means that no one gets to enjoy an esoteric symbol for how much longer? How many more
20,
centuries?
15 years.
Is,
Right.
oh, we only got 15 years left.
Yeah,
but like
the
forever,
singularity is like, yeah.
the swastika is going to be forever tainted for the rest of our lifetimes, I think. And it's sad that it almost seems that, I mean, maybe Hugo Boss got a little bit of a dodge there, but just as you're comparing these images of Kamala to Hitler, it's like, does that also mean that he tainted style? Because they've got some
Absolutely.
very forward-thinking militaristic style.
So I would disagree with everything you said up until that question. So I think that like the idea that you're saying that our lifetimes, these symbols are destroyed. I mean, I've definitely, I would
Is
say,
it not illegal to display that in German media right now?
For now, yeah. But I would say, but like try being a Hindu
Well, you
in
also,
Germany.
I
What are they
think
gonna do?
you plan to live to 400, so this
Right.
might be
Sun
unbalanced.
Tzu, that's a big part of this. But Sun Tzu, The Art of War, never create a law that you cannot enforce, right? So Germany is in the process of losing this argument, and by importing intolerant people through their progressively evolved tolerant society, they're creating bastions for traditionalism. It's democracy, which is creating the incentive for tradition, right? So whatever happens in that pendulum swing, we're going to see, I think we're getting to the edge of that pendulum swing, and we're coming back soon, which is going to be authoritarian, violent, fascist, in all the worst possible ways. That's going to come back. That's what happens when a pendulum swings, and I'm concerned about that. But I don't think the swastika necessarily is going to be part of that. I think it's going to be, like many things, liberated. But what you're saying also is true, that architecture, style, I mean, even Masonic ideas like Doric and Corinthian columns, right? These things are beyond offensive. People are ignorant to them, right?
Well, isn't
Oh
she-
yeah, go ahead and hide. It wasn't that big of a. I
Look-
didn't
All
even-
right, all right.
Is
So
it-
just don't
okay,
start
okay.
talking about composite.
Doesn't she from a tech, like, because of the things that I could say if I was to go there, because I see a lot of people going there with Trump, but if I was to go there with Kamala, if I was to like, what is it about her that could exude some type of not just fanaticism, but literal like fascistic behavior? So
She's a
like,
prosecutor, yeah.
okay. Well, there's that. There's her refusal
Yeah.
to release the 5,000 inmates for minor drug offenses, despite multiple demands from the Supreme Court. Her only explanation being that they needed them for labor, those inmates, so basically slave labor. There's
And-
that. But for
and more.
experientially, what am I internally
Well-
reacting to that I think a lot of the public is reacting to, especially when you acknowledge that over 50% of the American population is now independent, not Republican, not Democrat. Those make up 25 to 25% respectively each. And so I would say that this is the just to stand on my soapbox, is that this is the third election in a row where I'm being told that the candidate who I and a lot of Americans are really enthusiastic about doesn't get to run, and that in all cases they have admittedly rigged the primaries, and it's all come from the DNC. It has not come from the Republicans. If you want to criticize the Republicans, there's plenty of things you can criticize them about, but as far as like actually bringing an end to democracy, I don't see that from them. And even on the point of January 6th, as bad as January 6th can be, Trump was trying to get in the National Guard. They had like months in advance. The FBI knew everything. They didn't put up any extra anything. There was no protection. Why was that? I think they had that bill ready. The anti-protest bill they had ready, and they put it for. There's no way they could have written it that quickly. Like, this was something that was pre-prepared. So it looks like they were hoping for a Reichstag. So if you're going to be over here talking about how somebody's freaking Hitler, and you're begging for a Reichstag to give you the excuse to do the things that you want to do, who's more fascistic?
And I'm sorry, I want to bring up also just
the way they let him. Sorry, the way they let all the people in and just let them through. It wasn't even close to a Reichstag. It was a controlled.
No, but they wanted it to be that, is my point, and there's indicators of that. And you can see
on that same note, though, I'm curious.
That day, you know,
did you guys ever land on whether it was just like fabricated stories, or if there was something legit to those huge piles of bricks that would just be laying out right around these like politically turbulent times? Like, was that just a whole bunch of people? Like, because I know
you know what, I think it's important to give. If you give people bricks, do they build buildings with them or knock things down? It's an experiment.
It was a social experiment.
You see what they did.
There was soup cans too, and all kinds of stuff during the BLM, right?
All right, I wanted to say this before I forget, though. So when we talk about Kamala Harris and Johnny Harris, I think it's his name. That's hilarious, Johnny Harris, who is the ex-Mo, who does like kind of soy boy videos about things. Even he can't even like defend Kamala Harris. But you know, we've talked about people that were kidnapped by the Masonic police force and everything else, and how she was a prosecutor. We have friends who've talked about how they were arrested.
I gotta throw in there. It's pseudo-Masonic. That was co-masonry, not real masonry.
Yeah, okay, but Masonic police force was the name of their, like, they had Masonic police force on their vehicle, asterisk, okay, whatever you want to say. And then the guy who was going to court in order to explain how this happened died. Well, I don't know if they were self-appointed, because the guy died. He died 2 minutes or 2 hours before his court trial, right? So we'll never be able to find out exactly what was going on with Kamala Harris.
Okay.
Fair enough. All right. But yeah, we could talk about more Sciences Canada, MK Ultra in Canada, how they said in Canada that she blended easily with anybody. It's pretty clear. But what I thought was freaky, Corinthian, get it? You love that, don't you, Tom? Corinthian? All right. What I thought was funny was the legislation.
You get 3.
All right, on a scale of 3 to 32, like, how far are we? No, I'm really trying. How she would prosecute was a legislative event. She would do studies on crimes and figure out what was the leading reasons or similarities in these cases. So criminals who had missed a lot of school, right? And so she went into school and found kids who were missing school, and then prosecuted the parents for the kids missing school classes, right? Which is like, okay, if they're rich white kids, they probably have enough money to figure it out. But if they're like an inner city kid whose parents are trying to get to work and couldn't get their kids to school on time or something like that, then the complete collapse of society, to then arrest the parents who are having a hard enough time being parents, is just crazy, right?
No, well, I don't know. This is necessary to the state, though. This is a core function of the state, the exact same way that our currency is only worth money because the state forces you to give them that money back. So if there wasn't an implied state-sanctioned violence to enforce this, it wouldn't work. The exact same thing with public school. Public school is like a state-mandated service that you have to take part in. Otherwise, ultimately you face, the consequence is state-sanctioned violence. Like, that's the end of the whole story if you're caught up in a legal system.
Which is exactly what the point is. Like, when David says, how would one sympathize or sympathize with someone who endorses Kamala Harris? Well, the way you would do it is you would say she's a statist, and that's exactly what Dick Cheney and now Barbara Bush and everyone else has said. She is a statist. And what is a state? According to Weber, it's the monopoly of violence. So if you are afraid of the destruction of the state, because some people would say that the destruction of the state is on par with decriminalizing or defunding the police force just times 10. Because if you defund the police force and you create an entire Chaz zone America, where literally the only safe, harmonious places would be like Las Vegas, where a mafia or maybe in parts of Colorado, where a certain cartel might be able to keep a certain amount of fascistic order, right? Other than those places, the monopoly of violence would dissipate. And that's terrifying to neoconservative Marxists, because that's we spend all of our money in the world on military to protect Pax America. This Americana harmonized, it's why the dollar buys what it does. So if we destroy the state, not just the United States of states, but the idea of the monopoly of violence, then what do you have left? You have corporations that will police themselves. You have Thiel's investment in cryptocurrency, right, which is a privatization of banking, even a further step than the Federal Reserve. So these are things that we're all like arguing for and we're advocating for. But where are we going with it?
Right. Well, I think the way that we're treating this is almost like completely, not just us, but like in general, like the public at large. It's like, it's kind of unreconcilable. It's literally like one of R.D. Laing's knots, because there's, on its own terms, it's unreconcilable. So like, in other words, like I think I was talking last week or recently about Harpman's triangle, where you have the oppressor, the oppressed, and the ally, and it's how like you have to play one of these roles in the thing, and that's like where all the whataboutism comes from. You're like, well, what about this person? So I just like, that's why I just want to look at it and I'm like, how did we get here and what is actually happening? Because it looks as though this whole conundrum that we're in is kind of by design. And there's a chaos factor as well. And that's where it gets misleading, because people want to treat it that there's this ultimate control. But really, it's kind of like what we did with ISIS, where it's like we provide like their template of what it is that they're ascribing to, and then they go off script, and then they become their own rogue thing, and then we're still trying to control it. But we set this into motion, right? Kamala's necklace. Okay.
I had a thought here. Just what I'm seeing in this election is that both sides are 100% convinced that they're going to win. Like all the Kamala people think they're going to win. It's going to be a landslide, and all the Trump people feel the exact same way. And I really honestly don't know what's going to happen. I feel like Trump probably will win, and that's the whole thing. But it's like a recipe for bifurcating reality. And like, if there are, it seems like if there are timeline shifts or whatever, they would be in these moments of like
that's
huge binary decision making. Like,
yeah, I'm pretty sure this is like a major. So like, two thoughts on that. Time travel wars are happening, and we are so close to the singularity.
We might wind up on the other
no
side.
Question.
Some people,
no question.
If everybody's happy, everybody that wanted Kamala to win, Kamala's going to win.
I think we're going
Trump
back in time,
and
I think every day they're like, it's like
it's such a great point. I never thought of it that way before, though. But if there was even like a 0.00 repeating 1% chance that like alternative timelines actually exist in the way that we can discuss it, right? That it would be centered around like these huge monumental events, and this would be close to one of those monumental events. So if anything is related to time travel,
hey, isn't that similar to what Philip K. Dick argued about the Vallis loop? That when in regards to like Watergate, and how it's kind of like this crack in the thing where we're existing in this paradigm, and then
that's what George Washington meant when the aliens contacted him, and they said you were going to win some major battles, and you were going to have the opportunity for the American Promethean experiment. And that's what e pluribus unum means, right? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about multiple timelines.
Did you just say George Washington was talking to aliens? Is that
for sure? Well, but I don't believe that they're actually aliens. I think they're just
he was in cult, and that cult was into aliens, man.
I think that most of this idea of aliens are just us in 20 years. So maybe like less than 20 years, we get to that singularity point.
Went back in time and created the United States in a world where the United States didn't exist.
Yeah, because simultaneously you have the creation of the religion. So you have philosopher kings that create religion in order to control the masses, because masses love trad. And this is like also counterintuitive when you think of democracy. Like the Nazis came out of the democracy. Like the Weimar Republic was a very democratic system. That's how it happened. So it seems like a dangerous thing. The more democratic the process is, the more likely it is to return to the majorative fear of future and progress back towards tradition, or worse, romanticization of tradition.
Right. But isn't this kind of the idea of like mystical Christianity, is that Christ consciousness is like outside of time, that time isn't linear,
Right.
like we relate to it, but really like that's why one could make the argument, what is salvation in that sense? It would be to because you're like, look, all these things haven't happened. Like the actual prophecy of the Mashiach is that you would see all debt is forgiven, all slaves are released. Like we're beyond that. So the Christian perspective is that ultimately, in terms of consciousness, we're all like here already on some level. You just have to realize it, right? And that's why they're like they want to spread it. But that gets kind of twisted when you look at missionary stuff and all, you know, like where people go with that. But just like in its essence, like that idea actually kind of holds that if one individual was to transcend the matrix, as it were, then they're proving that we all exist beyond that, whether we know it or not. So the good news would be the revelation that you are beyond that, you know. Am I oversimplifying maybe? But
no, I mean it seems like the inevitable. So because I mean that's why I think it's so close also, because the singularity is associated with technological advancement, and we're getting to a point where the telescopic nature of advancement of technology, or just even of techno of craft, is so fast, so exponential, that we're going to hit this point also where we create maybe like 0G when we hit 0G, that's when I think time itself will become we could redefine what we mean by the fourth dimension. We can create new versions of this moment, and that makes the time that's happened before, that moment would be not inside of time. Time would be inside of that moment, right?
Here's the thing, right? When you focus, you lose lucidity. So like if you were, I've been discussing this recently with somebody. So like if you are having like a lucid dream, for example, and you focus on one thing, you can go back into the unconsciousness of the dream. Like you don't like the real objectivity, not like as a like mental position necessarily, but just as like an insight perceptual experience. Like that has everything to do with time, right? Like you get locked in time by your fixation on one thing. So we see that with all kinds of stuff. We see that with race. Like, you know, if you look at like what Morgan Freeman had to say about race when he's like, I don't want a month, and his explanation as to why is like, you are you, I am me. Can we just exist? Like, just come on, like what is it? Because there's something to that, because he's acknowledging that when you fixate on something and you focus on something, that's where neuroticism comes from. Like and we treat it that like a lot of neurotic behavior is super freaking normalized. What is up with what like was fringe becoming mainstream, and in it becoming mainstream, people lose touch with whatever the direct insight was in the first place? So in other words, like we go through some traumatic, horrific event, say it was World War II, say it was Vietnam, say it wasn't even war, say it was some, you know, even in your personal life, and you have an insight from that, and you're like, oh, I have perspective, and there's humility in that perspective. But then when you completely fixate on it, you lose touch with it. It's like a spiritual teacher who becomes like a cult leader. It's when they kind of imbue this spiritual experience they had of their enlightenment, but the more that they fixate on this thing that happened to them in the past, now in the present, they've now lost touch with whatever it was that they really apparently learned, you know, supposedly learned. You know, do you know what I mean? Like it's you lose your direct perception of the reality of it the moment that you relate to a representation of it. It's like Krishnamurti used to say, truth requires no representation, you know.
We talk about that cycle too, about like weak men make hard times and hard men make like that whole aspect. But I also feel that there's a designed aspect to that, the same way that Common Core exists to make it so that your parents can't help you with your homework, right? Because you got to do the math different than they had to do it. And this, it might sound silly, but the same way that a kid runs home because someone called him fat and misgendered him, and he's like, Grandpa, you can't relate to the trauma that I'm going through. And the grandpa's like, I had bullets flying at me in the war. But it's true. Like they're being attacked on completely different types of trauma, and it doesn't necessarily invalidate one or the other. It just makes that's the Common Core. That's the version of like, you can't have your trauma relate to your parents' trauma because it's always changing generationally. If there was like a consistent trauma that everyone through, then you could actually build like up a resistance and like a network for it. But as it constantly changes, then you can't do that.
It puts
So
you.
retail?
It takes the relationship from the individual, the parent, to the individual, to the state, and the parent to the state, instead of
Right. Well, there's also what is a genuine physical threat versus what is a psychological threat.
Yeah.
So your ego is challenged, and you treat that as though your body was attacked. That's why people are like, words are violence or whatever. But are they? You know what I mean?
Whoa,
Really?
watch it.
No, but also I think it's true that the capacity to survive war should be valued maybe at least as much, but probably more than being able to emotionally process, like emotionally be able to not be blackballed in your school, because that's I think
Whoa.
that's what it is.
Take offense to that.
Right, but isn't that kind of where we're at, where we try to pretend that everything is equalized in order to
Honestly,
bring
it's
down...
the opposite of blackball, in my opinion, because blackball infers that anonymously one person can disagree and now you're not getting in. It's the inversion of a blackball.
It's actually more of a white cube, really.
It's yeah, I mean, but it's like publicly stating like this person should not have this role or be accepted into this community because of these reasons. Who's with me? Like that is the complete opposite of a blackball.
Dude, I'd much rather get a white sugar cube at a party than blackball. That's true. But what did you think about this? Scientists find brain network is double size in depressed people. Do you think that this is related to like
I'm so depressed because I'm so smart.
Hey though, I just mentioned Krishnamurti, but that it's no measure of good health to be well adapted to a profoundly sick society. So, and the way we respond to people who are depressed is we're like, oh, you need a pill, you need to do this or that. It's like sometimes it's like, hey, are they actually responding to what's happening in the world or their environment? Like their awareness of it is greater. And I don't think this is true in all cases, but I think there's something to be said for when you especially if you haven't already been like made the adjustment of integrating like the recognition of the shadow, even especially on like a collective level, like collective shadow is something really scary and disheartening, because it's like, I mean, I don't know, like I look for things to be positive about, even on the political landscape. Like I was enthusiastic about Kennedy. Then you look at what happened and you have to go along step by step and watch what they're doing. And it can be really freaking disheartening. If I was to get, depressed in reaction to that, somebody could say that that was about me, when really, is it just me responding to how corrupt and terrible everything is? And is that something that you just shouldn't do because that's, you know what I mean? Like, where's the line? It's kind of difficult.
Well, you got to just jump on the Trump train, David, because that's the way. I want to say that what I've been thinking about Trump this coming election is, I mean, obviously there's a lot of things different, but one of the things that's different between Trump in 2016 with Trump in 2024 is Robert F. Kennedy and Musk and Tulsi and all these other people that he seems to really legitimately this time have entangled with, and they're going to actually, I mean, they're saying all the things that I want to hear. So maybe I am getting sucked in again, but
I can see how that could happen both ways. But I mean, it is hard not, that's what I meant when I said to my mom, like, it's crazy. All these different kinds of people. They're like, I mean, the way that their statists feel though, right? The Dick Cheney and Kamala Harris and Obama and all that, to them is essentially the same thing, because they have like kind of novel ideas about how they want to exploit you, right? But the other side is true, like that they want to realize their potential in their own personal ways, right? Elon Musk's idea of his self-manifestation is different than than Mark Zuckerberg's, or than what's a good example of someone you just brought up a second ago?
Kennedy or Tulsi?
Yeah, Kennedy is a great. RFK is very different than Mark Zuckerberg, right? So the fact that they're on the same side that's wild. That's a wild amount of teamwork.
This is the argument, and a lot of people don't seem to realize that Kennedy has consistently criticized Trump and has never stopped. But he criticized him about very specific things, and this is where you see the distinction between DTS and somebody who actually has legitimate criticism. So his argument now is that he's like, okay, well, all things considered, since I don't have a possibility for myself because that's been ruined, and I could go on for 20 minutes as to how exactly that happened and why it's almost entirely the DNC's fault with a super PAC called Clear Choice that went out.
Really also predictable. bad,
Right.
like
The
predictable.
thing is that you do what you can. So it's kind of like, this might seem dramatic, but it's like in Jojo Rabbit when the kid is standing there with the mother and they see the people hanging in the courtyard and he's like, what did they do? And she's like, what they could. Because you're literally like you're put in this position, like this is all set up, like this was a strategy. And so I think what the Democrats have really made a mistake with, especially in 2016, and they may be making the exact same mistake again, is just this overconfidence in people not having a protest vote. Like they think that they can win just through the lesser of the two evils. And this is an old strategy that goes way back. I found Hunter S. Thompson talking about it in 1972, like at that time saying, how many more of these do we have to sit through? Who's that?
Are you kidding me? Come on. Who would it be? It's Terry Garr. Come on, dude.
Oh, okay, thank you.
This is Terry Garr in Dennis Hopper's kitchen. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
We're gonna just keep putting pictures of her up to celebrate her legacy while we talk about other things.
David, I have a weird bias and I hope it doesn't sound like all like fart smelly, right? But
Okay.
it almost feels that RFK is too cerebral. He involves too much logic in any of his arguments to ever like he would never be a main contender because he can't talk to. I'm on the main line here, but RFK Jr. can't really fill that main stage because he doesn't talk out of that pure emotion, the thing that you can speak to a crowd of 50,000.
I disagree with you, and I'll tell you exactly why. I disagree with you for the same reason that Joe Rogan is by far the #1 viewed thing in the world right now, basically. Like that.
Really, Vauxhall didn't win? Okay.
He's in America at least, because you look at it and you're like, dude, the most viewed highest rated show on television, he was like frequently like triple to quadruple the amount of viewership. And people really want to see real conversations. It's why people are tuning in to our podcast. We're just here shooting the shit, and people are. I don't
think this is the same pond though. Like all these fish we're talking about do not swim in the same pond. The active voter and the active people that are into Joe Rogan podcast.
I think we're underestimating the public, and I think that's the problem. That the extremes of both sides make is that people are more intelligent than we give credit.
Maybe, although I guess the way that I see this, Trump versus Kamala, it's like McDonald's and Pizza Hut and Coca-Cola versus playing Madden with your homies and going to church. Like go ahead.
Anyone is welcome to disagree with me on this, but we talk about the tolerant left and all of this kind of stuff. People are very sensitive if you made fun of Biden's stutter, for example. Like he has a vocal issue. We've discussed it. My feeling is that, and you can call me naive for this, and that's fine, but I really believe that had the Democrats, not that they would ever do this, but had the Democrats run him when he was first running, when he was trying to run as a Democrat, if they got behind him, he would be our next president. If he was running like that, to me, that's just a given because of how well he did while having to go against the grain the whole time.
I do not disagree even a little bit because look at who they ended up running with. It was the person that got the least amount. So anyone that the Democrats decided to run with.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, anyone they decided to run with would be in the same position right now.
Yeah, and I just want to say that RFK, I mean, it's a non-starter with the Democrats because RFK everything he stands for is completely contra everything the Democrats stand for, which is they're the party of the pharmaceutical industry. And
he's a traditional Democrat, and they can't handle that. They don't look anything like what they used to, especially when it comes to big pharma, especially when it comes to war, the existential issues. So if Kennedy can align himself with an existential issue that Trump can acknowledge, like that he's like, yes, this is a major issue. He's like, we can have all these disagreements, but we have to have some meeting place if we want to continue to exist.
And that's
refusal to have to just completely divide yourself from half the country is a terrible political move. So like even at a time when
unless it's I don't know, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying when Hillary said deplorable, I was like, what a terrible political move. Why would you just debase half your country?
So we don't think in the same way as the rest of the world, right? So in America's really strange. Like if you go to Germany or you go to Russia, they're thinking more generationally, actually. Like Germans think in like 8-year, 10-year terms. Russians think in like 20. China thinks in 20, 25-year cycles, really, like generational cycles, right? We're like thinking 4-year terms, which is 2 years to 4-year terms. That's the way Americans think. And every 4 years we have
We live in the moment. What? This is to our benefit. No,
we get children of corn
Be
to
here now.
voters. Yeah, but it's the naivete of the new voter that makes America possible, and we're not thinking about the long-term effects of any plan. Like, well, in 25 years, we're going to have to pay for that. Yeah, you're going to have to pay for that.
Right.
That's literally every single thing we've ever seen happen. So
Right.
I wonder about provocation. So you call them deplorables. Okay. Who are the left in America? Most of the time, they're disenfranchised children, even if they've grown up, of conservatives. I don't know if that's completely clear, but it seems like a big "I hate you, Dad" thing from the left a lot in America. It's like, well, my parents were racist, or my parents were ignorant and arrogant and wrong, and I'm doing my best to admit. It's very like after the war, because we were bad. I admit that we were so bad. It's just that's the ideology of the Democrat. So to then say, hey, every policy that they're doing right now objectively is to take away freedom, to meddle with democratic processes so that the votes don't even count realistically. I mean, how do you know who's voting for what if the entire system is fake? Who should care the most? People that are Republic valued or people who are obsessed with democratic processes? I don't know. It seems like it'd be,
I feel the elections, they're really just temperature checks to figure out how big the backlash will be when they decide to pick whoever they were going to pick all along to begin with. So if it comes in and it's like 2080, then they can be like, whoa, it was like 58, 40 or so, guys. They can kind of like play with that sliding scale. But if it's so obscene, then I think that maybe they have to let certain things slide. I don't know.
Can I go further? Can I go further? That they don't really care what you call their new dictator, so long as Hugo Boss makes the outfit. I feel like that's the thing. They're just trying to see how far they have to go to swing you back and forth until they get to the Christian right or the neo woke or whatever it is.
I want to just submit that instead of doing the neocon and the liberals or like the right versus, can we just go back to the Masonic versus the anti-Masonic parties? Like, let's just try that division and just see if it's any better than what we've got now.
I don't think you're wrong, actually. And I think so. It's interesting when people think about, and we're talking about a pluribus unum earlier. I think that America is a Masonic experiment and a failed one, right? Because the idea was to liberate. Well, I wish it had gone better.
Not yet, man. We got the unfinished pyramid. It's still going
to cross the fingers for that singularity, that Masonic singularity. But you
trust the plan.
It's ongoing. We got till 2037.
Masons were the original QAnon. Is that what we're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Where we go, when we go all.
We talked about this idea that philosophers need to build a religion, right? So if you create a way out of worshiping Calvinist predestined fate-based reality into a self-manifestation direction, that is kind of the Masonic experiment. But I don't think as many people want freedom as you think. That's the problem. And they've
want real freedom and the responsibility of that real freedom. They want a conceptual freedom, but that actual freedom is too much. Yeah,
right. I think they like tradition more than they like freedom.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have this whole leader, propping up thing.
Totally, because it's all about becoming more self-responsible.
That's what Jack Parsons argued. That the demigods would not exist without us wanting to not embrace our own, what comes with freedom. Yeah,
I think that is it. We're becoming so, but maybe that's the benefit is that over time, it's like Fabian steps or something, that we would get to a point where people would react against religious control, puritanical witch burnings, and want to be enlightened, free beings, right? With free agency and everything else. But I don't know. Doesn't it feel like the opposite? It seems like we're moving further and further towards despotic fear, safety, like TSA security in 9/11.
Yeah, but the binary is to blame largely. So like this is something that's should be so obvious, but look at what's happening with the binary thing. Our treatment of it in terms of gender is such that there's this whole emphasis on the spectrum, right? This didn't even used to exist necessarily like in gay pride stuff until relatively recently, almost with the pandemic, right? But there's this whole thing that it's like there's an emphasis on that gender is a spectrum, but when it comes to politics, zero spectrum. If you don't meet every check, like, check mark,
point.
like you feel, you have the bullet points, and it's like,
Is
if
he-
you don't
is he
fall in
right?
that, you're one or the other, and both
That's a good
sides will
point.
sometimes do that to you. So it's just it's that classic meme of the guy who's like, I think both sides have some points to me, and then the left pushes him to the right,
see,
and he's
that's
caught by the right. And then they're like, "Oh, are you okay?" And they're like, "Hey, why are you siding with the enemy?" That's the dynamic that's taking place. But isn't it weird? Because politics is an absolute spectrum. It's always been a spectrum. There is no like you're completely this or completely that traditionally. But now we're at a place where the same people, in many cases, that are emphasizing that gender is a spectrum, allow for no spectrum in politics. That you are this or you are that.
No, I think, and also, didn't you bring this up the other day? How crazy is it that in generations gone past, Democrats could always, it was invariable that Democrats would deny the election results. Like George Bush stole the election
over and over and over again. Yeah.
For decades, right? For generations. So
Totally.
it's just, and then to invert
Usually
it,
they're right. Because everybody steals elections. Every election probably been stolen.
but you're not allowed to talk
Mike
about
Kennedy probably stole the election.
that anymore, right? Well, yeah, of course.
People-
Well, his
You
dad
mean
did. What'd you say,
JFK?
Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, JFK.
Yeah.
Contra Costa.
My grandfather used to say that all the time of how many dead people voted for JFK. Yeah. And the mob thought he'd be working for him, and then he wasn't, and then they didn't know what to do.
Very
Well, and
Trump
who had the media backing.
It's a very Trump-like situation there, because if somebody gets in on some kind of funny business, doesn't really know, and then all of a sudden they're in there, and then you can't control them.
The Kennedy family is interesting to me because they represent so many of the things that I dislike about politics, but they have this inherent underdog quality to them that almost makes them more sympathetic. But I mean, it's a political legacy funded on basically corrupt money that was sort of anti-American in spirit, I guess, or
Really?
real.
I'm proud of you.
It's a big
For saying
family, and the context is a lot. Like all of these people in the Kennedy family grew up debating each other regularly, like with and just the treatment of debate. That's my frustration with Kamala Harris.
I'm really surprised
fear
that
of
you're
like
against
having to be put on the spot to answer something on your own, to show that you have critical thinking, that you've given this enough thought to, and she just wants to play this part all that, like it just wants to, they need this thing to be so staged, and it comes across as really inauthentic, and most Americans seem to be able to recognize that, that this lack of authenticity. And that's why so many people, like I was saying, like gravitate to people like Rogan when it comes to where they're going to go for their media. They want a real discussion. They crave it, and we crave it in our personal lives, and people feel really isolated. They want to connect. Even people who come up to me angry at the farmer's market, I can see deep down they really want to like have a real genuine communication, and they're frustrated with themselves for being so conditioned to not even knowing how to do that. Maybe not anymore, maybe they never have, I don't know, but I can see that there's definitely like a desire from most people to like really have a genuine communication, to be okay with having certain disagreements. But we made it in this tug of war. Abortion, at no point is this going to be reconcilable without compromise. At no point. And what we had previously was a relatively reasonable compromise. And you're like, okay, well, no super late term abortions, and they're like, okay, well, it's like, but they had to keep pushing that, and
I 100% agree with you when you're talking about on an individual level, and like people want to have these deep conversations, but I also feel like it's trying to compare quantum physics to astrophysics. Like, yeah, in the microcosm, these set of rules apply, but in the macrocosm, at a national level, even at like an entire state level, like there's entirely different rules and algorithms that you have to use to calculate trajectories and stuff. And for sure, RFK probably would like dominate in the quantum physics level, right? But it seems that he doesn't have the right formula to operate in at the astrophysic level.
People know that they're being lied to all the time, left and right. They all know that. And so like that's a indicator of authenticity from it. So why did Alex Jones become so substantiated following Bohemian Grove? They're like, he got in there, he took the footage. It was so like, oh, he's exposing something. People really want that on both sides. I think they know
John
that
Ronson never gets or was it Ron Johnson? I always get that mixed up, but he also was there, right? He's the one that kind of coordinated. I assume that he's the one that like packed the lunches and made sure that the car was rented.
The one that
Alex Jones was just out the back yelling.
It's so true. Yeah, there's two documentaries. There's Alex Jones's documentary and there's John Ronson's. And John Ronson's, you can clearly see in both, but even more with his, that Alex Jones is going to him for all the answers. Like he poses those questions to him, not the other way around. John Ronson doesn't have a single question for Alex. Alex has lots of questions for John Ronson.
The one other thing,
Well said.
the one other thing too is that you mentioned like the authenticity angle, and I almost like authenticity is dangerous because part of America, like the great part of America, to put bluntly and maybe ignorantly, is that like our wars are mostly proxy wars. Like we do proxy wars so that we don't have to do real wars. But part of that, it's almost like store-bought food means store-bought teeth. Proxy wars means proxy candidates. If you want to start having genuine, real candidates and people being real honest, we're gonna have warfare, like literal warfare on.
I think the other option is worse though, because I can consider that if you're doing like cost risk analysis and you're looking at it, we're already there at the place where nobody trusts the government completely on both sides. They don't trust.
But that's perfect for proxy. It's the same way that no one really believes that action hero in the movie is doing all the real stuff, but it doesn't stop you from like vicariously living that experience. It feels like you have to play into the lie in order to win in this. If it's all anyway.
This is like become like a Judeo-Christian sort of hellscape future with judgment to it. Like we talked about the singularity earlier, and this idea that where we're headed, you've got a pendulum swinging harder and harder both directions, faster and faster between the two, and a growing independent, at least ideologically, a desire of independence, right? Like not just in the United States, around the world. I think there's a desire to escape that and to have nuance and to have not to put into a lottery your vote, but to have self-determination, to actually be able to choose for yourself, right? And this is ironic when they talk about abortion, because I mean, a big thing, if you get deep into it, is really that they want the choice to choose for themselves. I mean, I know there's nuanced arguments about murder and death.
It's autonomy. Yeah, it's women wanting their own autonomy. Yeah.
But it's like such a great ideological idea to be able to be in charge of your own destiny. And the awareness that will affect probably your doing that will affect and maybe destroy the life of others just to exist, right? That is existence on so much of a level. And so we're getting to that mechanistic point where there are probably going to be just happiness machines that are not very human, compared to where we're headed, which is maybe beyond what most humans have gotten to experience, but it seems like maximally we're getting towards, which is furthered free agency, right? And that might be like heaven versus hell. Do you become a machine or do you get to make choices, real choices?
Yeah. Totally. That was the reason why when Kennedy was initially asked about like transgender issues, and he was like, I need to research it more before I make a statement. And then he was criticized for that for a few weeks. And then eventually he came out with a statement around what his position ultimately is. And it mainly just focused on like, hey, adults can do what they want. They have autonomy. They should have autonomy, but focusing on the children and like what's needed for the children, like that these things are irreversible when it comes to puberty blockers and when it comes to these surgeries. And notice how all these people criticized him so quickly initially. I didn't hear another freaking word from anybody on that issue after he came out with that statement, because it was like, oh, well, that's sensible. You know what I mean? Because you're recognizing that, hey, adults have this need for this autonomy, and then here with the children, like you have to, be like, hey, like.
It's another thing where it's like in 25 years or less, probably sooner. I mean, the big reason why the big reason why children are the victim of modern experimental surgeries is because of that, because these surgeries are not efficient enough, and these chemical alterations are not efficient enough. But in a very short period of time, as we're talking about with technology, likely that won't matter. Likely you'll be able to take an 80-year-old person and change their gender with a pill. Like that's coming.
We have these theoretics that we're like projecting for the night, like the grim meat hook realities around what's actually happening. Right. And that's the thing that a lot of people who are just like, we're allies, we support whatever the next thing is. A lot of them haven't been exposed to what's actually going on and so the depths of it. And what it actually looks like, some of these surgeries. What does that surgery really look like? And what is their experience? If you're getting to a place where a child is getting a surgery that will make it so matter of fact, they're going to have no pleasure in that area for the rest of their life and will never be able to have children, or what they're sterilizing them, which was, I mean, if we talked about eugenics prior to World War II in America, like we were all supposed to like, that, right? Like that wasn't a good thing, right? Like people were gung-ho about it, and they're like, whoa, you're going after poor people and you're sterilizing poor people and saying that they're poor because of some genetic issue or whatever. It's just like, we're like, oh, we saw that was a bunch of pseudoscience and we let it go, but then it rears back again. I think it's another form of eugenics is what's taking place right now. It's like
this is a hard one. I just want to be very brief because I don't want to like get too much into eugenics and like advertising for it, but there was something uniquely American, which I would almost say in a noble way, like Americans created a slightly more noble version of eugenics in that it was like commercially viable and it was incentivized, financially incentivized, not in a good way. Like you would obviously target a poor family and be like, hey, could you use $200?
And mentally handicapped people and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Right, but if it were done with like some sort of an incentive, and if the incentive just wasn't like or else, you know what I mean? I feel that at least just to point out the difference.
Well, that's what the vax was apparently. So we have that. But yeah,
a fair
Which
point.
Is also cattle, right? Vacus. I feel
fair
like
point. If someone got a free donut or a free like poutine, poutine is Canadian, but if you got like a free donut or something in exchange to
Minnesota
take part in that.
Better.
I feel that's better than getting pressured into it because you might have gotten fired or you work for the state.
Right. Well, that's coercion, and then you're dealing with the Nuremberg Code. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I feel like it's worth it. John had that question. You want to answer John Barrett's question? You want to do that, David?
What's that, John?
Is David against circumcision?
No,
I thought we'd have to pull up the Zohar for this.
Around circumcision, I think that there should be a game show called Defend Your Dick. And we should just and people from both sides, so we can have a debate because there's multiple sides to that debate. My actual feeling, which I'm not saying this should be the thing, but like in my idealism, I would say that doctors should never be allowed to even bring it up at all. And there's weird statistics with the thing that might go against what some people might expect, that when you have a mohel actually performs the operation and the way that it's treated, not the strange like rare sect that does the sucky thing and gives them hepatitis or whatever.
We all know.
No, I don't even shouldn't bring that up because it's.
No, I'm glad you do. Because they want
but anyway, no, I think
the show, I believe.
In my idealism, it should be up to the mother. Like I think the father should maybe have to agree or whatever, but I think it should mainly come down to the mother's choice.
Whoa,
because
that's weird.
if you're arguing about the religious aspects of it, which is something that I've studied, and there's arguments to what the function of circumcision historically like has actually been, it has to do with a whole practice. It's a spiritual practice, and you're actually putting all your attention on the tip. There's a whole other thing going on.
There's like a thing in the Zohar about this, right? There's
a lot of stuff in the Zohar about this.
There's a lot of things in the Zohar.
Why does the mom get so much of a say? That's
here's the reason why. Because in Judaism, your Jewishness is passed on from your mother. Not you know, you could make the argument that my father is Jewish, therefore I'm Jewish. But
would you have the same opinion of a father having an opinion over whether or not they circumcise the clitoris?
The mother is, there's no rationale for that, and that doesn't exist in any traditional place. I don't think. There was a problem in West Africa with that. What's that?
Is tradition the justification?
No, he's getting into the Zohar. There's a whole spiritual...
This is all like a larger
there's
you have to go through all this stuff.
Right, you're separating the feminine from the male so that you can be reacquainted with it at marriage. Like there's a whole thing, but it just seems odd that like biologically the person that would relate to you the least would have the most say over whether
she was the one who was attracted to the father's whole situation, and what she sees is what that makes more sense to me than the other way around, because of the nature of the tradition and everything. So much in Judaism is around preserving a tradition. If you look at R.A. Kaplan's
what is the purpose of it, David? Like because I honestly don't understand the religious significance of why they do it.
Okay, well, there's religious significance is what is currently now like in the tradition as a belief system, and then there's also like basically like ancient people's like relationship to their own bodies and their explanation for why they were doing what they were doing.
And so I've Mayan people drilling holes in their skull for religious purposes. So
totally. I've transcribed ancient text and its treatment of circumcision, and a lot of it doesn't resemble anything that I heard growing up and beyond around the like what is considered the traditional explanation. So it's kind of like almost like yoga practice type stuff, because for in your own like internal process, like somatic relationship to your own body, they believe that the tip of the genitals connects to the core of your brain, like the medial part of your brain. And so there's a spiritual practice. It's
It was a lobotomy.
where you're putting all of your attention in the sexual act on the tip of your genitals and the middle of your brain at the same time, and the two are supposed to connect in a non-linear way. And then there's a whole thing around that. Like it's
kind of kinky.
Yeah,
Totally,
so
it is actually. So I'm not circumcised, and I don't know why I have to say this on a YouTube video, but I did. And I think that the idea of genital mutilation of children is voluntary, and I tend to be only exclusively for voluntary anything, right? Like I think that I'm one of those weirdos who think that you should like model voluntary behavior to a child by asking them kind of, at least in a mimicking way, if it's all right to change their diaper, right? So that they get the idea. I mean, obviously they're a baby and they can't really, but like over a period of time, they should learn, you know what I mean? Like that they should have control over what happens to them. So I tend to be on that side of this. And yeah, I heard people say, imagine having a botched one. It sounds terrible. But I can also imagine if I were like in some crazy mystery school that wanted to like remove my hood or something like that. Like I get that in your 30s or 40s or something like, I mean, I think that's
that's happen to hear what Cliff High had to say about it. The whole thing about that started as a practice by the Elohim, the space aliens, to prevent humans from piloting the UFOs.
This is the funniest thing a Protestant. This is the funniest thing a Protestant has ever said. This is hilarious.
Well, I don't know.
I don't remember that part of the gospel. Do you guys remember that part of the gospel where Jesus ended the practice of circumcision? I don't. I think that came with the church later on, right?
Paul after the Didache, but it's still funny. It's a funny joke. All right, sorry, Alex, go ahead.
I don't know what you're talking about, but Cliff High, I don't know. He was given the whole thing about anti-circumcision thing about how the real purpose is that it's the Elohim, the space aliens worship in the Judaic religion is
Saturn ring. Yeah,
it's that it's has to do with the human mind-machine interface of the UFO, the whatever you call it. I don't even thing that you pilot as a. I don't know the specifics, but it's an interesting theory.
That sounds like kind of
for me personally.
Wait! I just want to say practically, how does this work? How does the ring of dead foreskin turn into a UFO?
No, you connect your
token to like
connect it to it's like the
interface.
You fuck the thing and it's very Cronenbergian mythos of something. But
I think we talked about this almost a bit.
Very serious about it.
The idea that everything is we're living in a very metaphysical reality. So I think this is why Solomon's seal is the design of a portal or of a spaceship. It's a spaceship is like the Solomon Square, and similarly that you find the city of China's Forbidden City is the same as a circuit board. These are replications of things of fractal patterns, which is like, I don't disagree, Thomas, that the microcosm and the macrocosm are different sets of rules, but I do think there's an alignment between them, right? I do think that there is kind of I would say
a simplification more so than an alignment.
Yeah.
And really,
a simple
it's not profound. It's all just Gustav Le Bonian, or like basically the whole aspect of the egregore that once you get a crowd together, it's only as small. It becomes one super organism, and the largest crowd is going to be like a national election, but it just forms a super organism that's only capable of the reason of the lowest common denominator. And I don't think that's a pessimistic way of saying like people are dumb. It's more of acknowledging that when you mix different chemicals together, it creates a different substance. Like the sum of the parts is not the equal of all them individually.
Right. I don't have it like it's weird. Like if somebody wants to make an argument, like when it comes to the gender ideology stuff, it's like if they were not pretending like there's nothing religious about this. Like if this was their religion, they're like, this is our religion. Like I would feel slightly different about it. Like I would have issues, just like I still have issues with certain things with Judaism, despite my connection to that. But it's like this idea of a gendered soul in like so many traditions would be something that's like maybe laughable or just like an absurdity, because like the whole thing of like what a soul is like transcendent of the world of form.
What's
as we
more
know it.
democratic than being able to vote on your own gender? That feels like such a democratic experience of looking at life.
Right. Well, it's also just what you're coming up against is this notion of like I was born in the wrong body. Who was born in the wrong body, and how is that not a religious idea?
That's the thing. I think also that there's something kind of to like homosexuality, androgyny, hermaphroditism. These things are not new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
These are very old.
You go back to at least the 80s, don't they? Or
you know what I mean?
70s.
So
No,
it's great.
Man.
The idea that people are like, oh my gosh, this is really it's actually as weird as saying, you know, oh man, if man were meant to fly, he'd be born with wings. Like you're not supposed to have those thoughts, right? It's at that level, and I think that's not. I mean, that's not reasonable. It is unreasonable to say that mankind will not create beyond to manifest its dreams, all of them.
It's honestly, that's a great analogy. And the first thing I'm thinking of is like, yeah, but the Wright brothers didn't strap like 7-year-olds to a plane and be like, let's see how this goes.
Well, but there are probably, I think Zeppelin did, right?
We did put monkeys on rockets and shoot the rockets up, and the little doggy. So,
yeah, I hope you guys can appreciate that like when I argue that I think that it should be like I don't think everything should be illegal, but I'm very sensitive to like what goes on in the medical establishment. Absolutely. And so like the doctors always bringing up that you want to circumcise the baby, like why is there any place for that there? I'm sorry, like I'm just like, you know, if you're religious, just be religious. Like
no, I've never been in the room when they offer that service. Do they have like gauges of like, do you want the quarter or the 1/8 inch? And then like they upsell you or downsell you?
There's more infections from the circumcision.
You want like rifling on the inside
than there are from the moils. So I don't know what the hell. Yeah, it's weird.
You saw that this is not even it. Oh gosh, Terry. You saw that, what was it? It was it was a thing on NASA that they made their urinals in the toilets large, small. Where is it again?
That's so Kubrickian, isn't it? Isn't Kubrick the one that always put toilets and everything?
It was like
there's the 10 rules in 2001: A Space Odyssey that was supposed to be the 10
gravity toilet.
I'm already distracted again. It's fine. Gosh, Terry, it's so bad. She was so great.
She was She was in this movie no, it's not a movie. I just found her
the video game.
It's a full motion video game. Full motion video game with Dennis Hopper about the Black Dahlia, which is sort of like
it's based like 90s.
Yeah, it's 98.
1998. I can't figure if it's like a PC game or
yeah.
And it's got Dennis Hopper was I don't know how deep their relationship goes. Like, were they married
8
or what?
CD-ROMs? Damn.
So the reason I bring it up also because I've been reading this Black Dahlia book, but because the suspect, the guy who did it, basically, this guy George Hodel was an abortion doctor, and then in the 40s in Hollywood. And so he basically was a part of this whole underground ring of doctors who were doing abortions on the rich and famous in LA. And so that was him. And so that relates to the whole issue of abortion, really, because this guy is like basically invented the modern serial killer. And I think the question for me, one of the many unanswered questions is like, what they do with all the fetal material, you know, like especially back then. And these people were all known to be like interested in sex magic and degenerate kind of behavior of all kinds. And of course, this guy commits the most brutal, sadistic murder of the century. And
you ever talked to Jason Barrera about this?
No,
I don't really talk to him.
Jason Barrera was obsessed with this for years. Yeah,
it's a fascinating story.
I haven't done a lot of like the deep crossover research on this, but it seems like there's so many correlations to the affair of poisons. And I can't remember the lady that was kind of like at the center of all that. But she was accused for the exact, like almost identical in that she had done somewhere upwards of like 200 abortions, but that also that her and her associates were basically poisoning people and like using this to do all sorts of ritualistic, like occult work in addition to this. So is this like a chicken and egg scenario? Like, do you start doing a bunch of abortions and once you hit a certain number, now all of a sudden you're into a cult? Or do you start in a cult and you're like, there is nothing more occult than the sacrifice of a child dating back to, 3000 BC plus, right?
That's what
Yeah. You know what
Crow wrote in his notes, which was supposed to be about sperm, but that's what they say. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I feel like that was one of the places where Planned Parenthood really shot itself in the foot, was when a lot of things emerged that were well documented about fetuses being sold on the black market and like all this shady stuff going on. And then there was like a statement that was made at the head of Planned Parenthood at that time. And they just basically just gaslit everybody. They're like, this isn't happening. They fired the people who were involved with that. What a terrible way to go about responding to that, just PR wise. Like, it seemed like if they wanted to gain public trust in Planned Parenthood, they'd be like, oh my God, this thing was going on. We got rid of these people. We would try to keep this from happening again. Like, that's what they'd want to hear from.
So my mom earlier, like my brother came over and he was talking about how you don't need voter ID you don't need an ID to vote in most of these states. My mom was like, yeah, you do. And my brother was like, no, you don't. Like, and my younger brother, who's pretty much the most, non-confrontational about it, he's like, it's not true. So then my mom finally, she's like, well, you guys are wrong. Clearly, you're crazy and you're stupid and you're now conspiracy theorists. I mean, unlike me, Martina, who thinks that Trump faked his getting shot in the ear, and you know what I mean? Like, she's got all these her own conspiracy theories.
Well, he is the wrestler, And
the apple far. Eris's apple does not fall far from the tree. But then she sends me an email that's like showing why voter ID is not required in so many states, and the valuable reason, because these poor innocent people couldn't in the last 4 years get any form of ID or a bill or something that just identified them. Couldn't get any singular piece of paper that could prove that they existed in 4 years, right? And those poor people need the opportunity to vote. Okay,
that also helps with ego loss, right? Like, that seems like a nice way to fizzle out your ego. It's like you can't even prove who you are.
But I think so. My mom, you can say, thank you, you were wrong. Thank you for admitting you were wrong. And that's fine. Like, now you understand. Like, you're now, do you justify? So this is, I think, the way that they could do it, that the abortion clinics are saying, well, it's very expensive to offer these services and have these doctors and to help all of these young women. And, what we are doing, we have to supplement that somehow. So what we're doing is to science. We're selling the whatever's. I mean,
that's another matter, because a lot of people for ages, like they get the form, they say, I want this to go towards science, and then whatever. Yeah, and that's fine. I don't see the problem. Like, just be transparent. Like, that's my complaint about Planned Parenthood. Most of what they do is like help women through their actual pregnancies and giving birth, and then also just like testing for STDs. Like, men that like just do nothing but say like Planned Parenthood is evil and needs to be gotten rid of or something, I have a charge on that, because I'm like, you're dangerous to our community. Everybody who's freaking like, you're spreading STDs, or you don't get tested ever, like, it's, I don't know, man.
However, I think that out of the closet thrift shop that gives you free tests is probably better than Planned Parenthood, because they just sell clothing to make up for it. I think businesses could do. I don't know how I feel about nonprofits, and especially ones like Planned Parenthood, because they're so systematic, and the effects, if they're not intentional or at very least accelerational. So you look at Puerto Rico, where they sterilize like 51%. I mean, I know it's time for Puerto Rico jokes, but I actually like Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
I like a lot of the Puerto Rican friends I have, and so
and you know what? They're having issues, man, with the garbage situation there. That's a fact. Yeah, is it something to just laugh about? Not really, but like
every Puerto Rican I know loved
at least he was informed.
They thought the joke was hilarious.
Yeah, at least informed humor. It's not didn't come out of nowhere. It's like, and you know what? The first thing I thought of when I heard that joke was I was thinking about Sweden, because Sweden has a garbage problem. Their garbage problem is that they don't have enough garbage, because they use all their garbage on keeping their buses running. because they're actually like more green than most places in the way that they go about that. Like they use it's like freaking the DeLorean where he's like throws the banana peel in there. They're literally doing that in Sweden. Look into it. And so I was like, dude, like, you know what, like that's symptomatic of a bigger issue than just like that they have, you know what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah.
it's not, and this isn't about the Puerto Rican people. This is about a problem that exists in Puerto Rico. Like we could do the same thing with all kinds of problems that exist in America environmentally, and it doesn't have to be like a knock against the people. It's just fucking industry and all this other stuff. Yeah.
I feel like they're also trying to. Well, you saw. Did you send me this?
You have a
Alex?
skeptical look on your face, Thomas, and I'm wondering what it's
Honestly,
about.
There's no such thing as a shortage of garbage. Like everyone has a surplus of garbage. Like what?
No, it's weird in
It's
Sweden.
compostable.
No, it's true in Sweden,
Dude,
right?
I gotta explain it. So when I was in Sweden last, oh, actually no, this might have been in Denmark, but still, this is like in the.
They have the same thing actually.
The same
Denmark does.
problem.
Yeah.
So they have everything's recyclable, and you could just take your recyclable steel cans because they don't just use cheap cans. It makes it more valuable that it's a precious metal because it can be recycled all the time, or glass. People will leave them outside. You could put them into the thing. They leave them all around the thing because if you bring them in, you can get some money. So they leave all their bottles next to the recycling booth so that the poor people can then do it because there's no trash anywhere. And so the poor people would die if they didn't leave the trash by the booth. It's in the booth.
I grew up with this, and because it's one of the weird things in Florida, there is no such thing as getting money back for your cans, your bottles, or anything. In upstate New York, this was a thing, and it was almost like a proven like recycling works in this part of the area, in this part of the country, because again, as capitalism proves, anything that's worth anything is worth money, right?
True.
So
right.
and it would be the exact same mechanic, was that you would bring your cans or your bottles to like the Safeway or the Price Chopper, and if you saw someone down on their luck that was hanging out, that was commonly accepted. Like you're not turning those in for yourself. You give it to that person that's going around collecting, and they've got like a huge cart full of it because they can make that extra 45 cents or whatever it is. Like they can stretch that farther than you can, go in there to shop and spend way more than that. So I understand that, but it also feels like one of those macrocosm things because again, in Florida, there's no, like it costs them more to recycle it. And they almost do it just for the sake of keeping this ubiquitous nationwide concept of recycling in everyone's mind, even though
it's illegal to use
pockets.
It's illegal to use like cheap plastics and non-biodegradable materials, and you have to use precious metals. So if your can's made out of stainless steel or titanium or whatever the heck they're doing, like it's a valuable, so they force companies to use more valuable metals and better materials.
I'm only smirking because when you say it's illegal or they force, it's like under threat of state violence at the most logical conclusion, right?
Well, you can't sell in their country anything that's not exactly, like they won't
or else what
yeah. And it's the Kingdom of Sweden. It is the Kingdom of Sweden, right? It's an authoritarian state.
And well, that's the thing though. If the Queen of Sweden got in big trouble, what's that? I'm sorry, Alex.
Oh, it's a very homogeneous population there in Sweden.
Really?
Right.
I don't know about that.
The amount of authority that the royalty in Sweden has is extremely limited. And during COVID, the Queen of Sweden actually got in trouble for making statements that went beyond what her own boundaries are in terms of, because she's not allowed to even give certain types of opinions because they don't want to have royalty influence, and they have safeguards against that. And so that's why they also, it's illegal to have mandates in Sweden. You couldn't mandate anything against the population. They had kind of certain businesses had ways to try and work around that, but for the most part, they didn't experience what the rest of the world did, and they fared better than almost anywhere in Europe or the world.
Does like the Queen or the King of England have to bow and act of subservient if they go into the financial district? There's like a little square area.
It's not that dissimilar to what we're supposed to have in America, where our government is public servants.
Oh,
so like they're technically supposed to also work for us.
Joe Biden actually said the funniest thing. The only garbage I see floating out there is Trump supporters.
Nice one. Floating out where? In the ocean? What is he talking about?
The Puerto Rico thing. I mean,
he's going to be my favorite. Even if no one likes him as president, he's going to be my favorite president in the Hall of Presidents by far. 100%.
I still like Ford. I still like Ford.
Ford was a
better. Ford. You like Gerald Ford? I like Squeaky Frog.
They won't be able to tell when Biden's glitching out.
W. Bush was also really hilarious. And also, you know what? Actually, if we could go back, Taft. Taft is the
Okay.
best, right? Taft like shatters bathtubs with his belly, and he sings musicals at Bohemian Grove.
Taft was
Okay,
I
actually
don't know
just
about
like
this Taft
typical dad
America.
bod according to 2024.
I love Taft. Oh my god, I would be Taft. He's a
I
werewolf.
mean,
but
skull and
he's-
bones all the way. Am I right?
Yeah.
Warren G. Harding would be the one I'd like to talk to.
Dude, Garfield before he gets shot. Okay, but maybe not, maybe so. What do you want to talk about? Life in prison without possibility of parole for DePape, right? DePape, whatever.
Wait, I am looking at Paul Pelosi. Okay, thought so.
Dude,
Yeah,
this
so
is
Paul
crazy.
Pelosi got
this is
hammered.
SyncTank, and I've got the biggest sync here because
got
earlier when you were
hammered.
talking about people like over fetishizing everything, I swear to you, this was the one scenario that popped in my head. I was like, oh, like Nancy Pelosi's husband likes to get hit in the head with hammers to like get his
Really?
rocks off.
Wow. Good example, though. Exactly.
It's the way he has
That's
his
exactly
drink in his
right-
hand too. That when he like answers the door, and you're like, "So there's an intruder." He's just like hasn't put down his cocktail or beer or whatever it was. I can't remember. But yeah, no, it's so over the top. Yeah.
Oh my god. All right, so this is the next part of it is when given the chance to address the court before sentencing, DePape, dressed in prison orange with his brown hair and a ponytail, spoke at length about September 11th being an inside job, his ex-wife being replaced by a body double, and his government provided attorneys conspiring against him. I'm a
2 out of 3
psychic.
ain't bad.
They
I'm a
drug
psy-
these people before they come out there.
I mean,
That's like what they
clearly
do.
September 11th was not an inside job, but the other stuff is true. I'm a psychic, DePape told the court, reading from a sheet of paper. The more I meditate, the more psychic I get. In a letter read in court by the victim's daughter, Christine Pelosi, Paul Pelosi called for the maximum sentence, saying that the last peaceful sleep he had ended abruptly when the defendant violently broke into his home, burst into his bedroom, and stood over his bed with a hammer and zip ties, demanding to see my wife, yelling, "Where's Nancy?"
So at which point did he have to get the drink? I don't understand. After that, while he was in the bathroom, while
Vince
he
is
had the guy
always
in
in
the
a
bathroom.
tan, kind of like the Canadian show, the Trailer Park Boys.
Totally Trailer Park Boys. It's just
Like
so
it doesn't need an
much-
explanation. That's just there. It's part of his character, actually.
It's just,
This is the riot.
I mean, it's just, I can't even handle it.
Oh my god. It's
This,
so over the
okay,
top. dude.
maybe this is more of just me being snarky, but I really have become so jaded over time. Isn't this what like most fetishes in California are? It's just like straight guys hiring other straight guys to attack them, and so they can be like sexually charged victims.
I think a lot of the time it's like it's a lady, like, you know, you ever, I don't know, I don't have to get, yeah,
It's happened in California, did it not?
Yeah, of course, but in California,
Yeah, the guy was from Berkeley. Yeah.
It would have
a
been
lot-
awesome if Laura Loomer was like in the front yard too, like I'm not leaving. Like it was everything at once.
Yeah.
Oh god.
But yeah, the tricks, the dominatrix, that's what a lot of California seems like. Okay, so Terry Garr, did you have any more thoughts in cryptocribrology? You want to talk about Terry Garr? Because I know you were thinking about it. Alex, you've got numbers in your head. I was looking about Swingin' Affair, one of my favorite 60s, swinging 60s movies. Got Dick Dale and the Deltones, king of surf guitar in this film.
She's got quite the filmography here. Just going through it all, like wow, there's a lot of stuff here. The Black Stallion. Oh yeah, Dumb and Dumber. She wasn't there in Dumb and Dumber. She's Mary Swanson's sister.
Kissing
I think
cousins with
she's in her
Elvis.
family.
Wait, did you say that she's in Black Stallion?
Yeah.
Who's she in the Black Stallion? The mother?
Yeah, somebody's mother. Alex's mother.
Oh.
I love all these.
Kind.
I'm a big beach film guy. I love these 60s beach films. And so
This
Pajama
exact
Party,
movie right here was actually in
Conversation
my
is one of the
NASA
greatest
comic.
movies ever made. so-
Really? Yeah, because this movie is great because it's about a Martian who lands amidst a swim party and tries to convince everyone that he really is who he says he is. I mean, there's more to it than that. But he's trying to get along, and he realizes that this is like the age of Aquarius, the perfect time for an alien or extra, and maybe an exoteric futurist to arrive. Look at the time travel melting candle thing. There's a lot to Pajama Party. I would like to recommend it. She's also in Batman, The Hardy Boys, The Mystery of the Chinese Junk. That
Ooh,
just seems like a
clue.
right
I'm
there.
gonna get a clue. Maybe it'll
they
solve
talking
the
about
Pelosi
opium?
thing.
I haven't actually seen this one, and I assume they're talking about the junk ship, but that's even more to the point if you think about it, because of the the trade route. But I'd like to see this one. It has Tim Matheson. I haven't seen it though.
So can I just speak to the Black Stallion really quickly?
Yeah, let's do that.
She's in Black Stallion. Like Black Stallion, the was it the writer of the dialogue? One of the writers was what was her name? Something Matheson, I think. She was the writer of all the children's dialogue in E.T.
Melissa.
And so Steven Spielberg chose this writer because of her writing in the Black Stallion. This is a great movie, by the way. I don't know if everyone realizes like how good the Black Stallion actually is, like visually. And it starts out as kind of an art film because there's like a long segment of like no speech where the kid is interacting on this island after this ship sinks or whatever. But that writer, E.T. So okay, I want to share something. So there's a musician named Wiseblood. I don't know if y'all are hip to Wiseblood, but Wiseblood is incredible.
Oh, you mean Natalie Merring?
Thank you. Yes, Natalie. And so she's coming out with this album called "And in the Darkness, Hearts Aglow." And like I was like, I've been following her sync thread for like a while, and I was looking at like the cover of this album, and she's got this glowing heart, and it was like the first thing that came to my mind. Like if I ask most people, like, what do you think of when you think of a glowing heart in terms of media? Like what imagery comes to mind? Just about everybody would say E.T., right? E.T.'s got this glowing heart kind of in a similar way. And then I go to look up like E.T.'s glowing heart, just anything about it. And I find this article about Steven Spielberg describing this writer who was the writer of the dialogue in Black Stallion and E.T., that she herself is E.T.'s glowing heart. And I was tripping out on that. And so I was like, oh, and I saw the Black Stallion connection, and like I bought like pre-order of the LP, and I was like that morning before I got the record, I was like, too bad there's no horse imagery. And I get the record in the mail, and I open it up, and inside there's just like an image of Natalie on a horse, and I was like, oh shit, there's like a horse connection. Wow. But it syncs incredibly well. I have it on Twitter and on my website.
Well, sorry,
go ahead.
Well, I just did just the first thing came to mind. I just looked up from the birth of Natalie Merring Wiseblood to the birth of Melissa Matheson, the writer of Black Stallion.
Yeah.
In weeks, it's 1984 weeks, so 1984.
Dang.
And that's interesting for so many reasons, but
right. So her last album before that was Titanic Rising. And so I pair that with the 1953 Titanic, but then with this movie Black Stallion, like I wasn't expecting this. Like I haven't seen it since I was a kid, and the whole thing starts with a ship like the Titanic sinking, and that's how the kid ends up on the island. So it's just like it's got all the elements, like, and even her music video for In the Darkness Hearts Aglow, or at least one of the songs on that album, I forget what, I think it's the first song on the album, that like she had all the imagery in the video is like a ship like the Titanic, and it was like it ended up even containing that bit in there. It's super trippy. It's really beautiful. It's like a beautiful sync. They're not always like
also fund the Federal Reserve.
Good question. I don't know. What was the name of the other ship? The Olympia or something? We've talked about that before.
Right. The Britannic, the Olympia. I think though that anytime we
I just realized. Yeah.
Anytime you see it, well, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, just her birthday, June 11th, is also Gene Wilder's birthday, which is he was in he dated Terry Garr for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. It's not gossip, it's sync.
We're gonna have to bring it back to, because after that, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, because I think that's really the thing that, I mean, right? Like this is the movie she's in that when I think about this is the movie that kind of bridges the gap between aliens and futurism.
It's a classic. I gotta love it. Jesus. Could watch it any time over and over.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is one of those movies where it's insinuating pretty clearly that aliens are us in the future, right? And that these are kind of our gray drones that are interacting with us more. And also the amount of MK Ultra sort of PTSD, all of these people touched in weird places by an angel kind of vibe. That's, I feel very strongly, it's the poltergeist girl life story, inverted. Because it's
interesting.
Because it's like this 5th season of X-Files, right? It's where you find out the aliens are actually just dudes in suits wearing a mask when they touch you.
When you're referring to Heather O'Rourke when you say that, when you say the poltergeist girl.
Did you realize? Sorry, David. Did you realize that E.T. June 11th. Natalie Merring was June 11th. You know, so okay.
Really? Really?
Wait, what's this?
So Wise Blood was born exactly 6 years after E.T. came out. They both came out on the basically. She was born on June 11th. E.T. came
Born
out
on the release date of E.T. 6 years later. Wow, what a trip.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So anyway, just go ahead.
Yeah, totally interesting. Oh,
I
wow.
think making art in general is a way to
tight matrix here.
hack yourself out of the simulacrum, or to be more than just a happiness machine, right? And so that's partially why, like, this kind of technique or witchcraft or whatever you're calling it, is actually why it's possible to make a ritual. What do you call it? Where you fulfill a prophecy, right? Where you're interacting with the synchronicity itself, because you're.
I mean, secularly, I could say you would say like you can collapse your own functions instead of being paid to collapse the function of the corporation.
I'm just trying to function. Just trying.
Dude, she's freaking rad, dude. She did a tour, like a global. She went around the world, and she was out. I think it was the world, maybe just the U.S. But she was asking people everywhere she went whether or not they thought that Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landing, and like just taking an audience poll, like how many people think this, you know? And I was like, dude, how many? There's not that many musicians that like just interact with their audience in those kind of ways. She's like, oh, interesting.
Is she too big to come on SyncTank?
A good question. So. I don't know. There's somebody I could maybe talk to.
I feel like we're getting bigger. We're getting bigger every day.
I got her or I hope that I got her a thumb drive with the Black Stallion and Titanic Rising with the 1953 Titanic on it at her concert one time, but I gave it to the woman that performed before her. And like, I don't know if she gave it to her because I think she maybe was a little offended that I was like talking to her, and I was like, "Oh, could you give this to Natalie?" It was like instead of me being
like, is this thing gonna explode once I provide 5 volts to it? Like that's probably the other thought.
You know what? I can understand that if you give somebody a thumb drive. But I had a letter with it that explained what it was, so maybe hopefully she would. I don't know. Whatever. It was a long shot, but I tried. You know, I got a letter to Charlotte Gainsbourg once, and that was pretty satisfying. But there was no
new idea. Is the next time you go to a concert, bring a little like $30 projector and a battery backup, and project a QR code to the video somewhere where everyone can see it. Bam, free one. Freebie.
I need people like you in my life, Thomas, because that wouldn't have ever occurred.
I'm in your life already, David. We're inseparable.
Yeah, killing people. We should clone you a bunch.
There's some kind of connection between Melissa Matheson and Kathleen Kennedy. I just know it.
Ooh. Oh yeah, there has to be, right?
The double M and the double K.
The ILM connection and everything. Yeah.
And Melissa Matheson also reminds me of Mr. Miles Mathis that I always talk about, the disco merchant.
Yeah, but as far as like Close Encounter Third Kind go, there's your connection there. Did she actually have a direct connection there?
Wait, who? What?
Kathleen Kennedy is ILM, right? Wasn't she Industrial Light and Magic, or was she just?
Well, she produced E.T. with Steven Spielberg. I mean, she's Steven Spielberg's right hand, kind of.
Was she ILM? I don't know if she was ILM. I know that she was Amblin.
I thought she was.
No, she's a Spielberger, so she was.
Is she really a Kennedy though? I mean,
she's
not that kind
she's
of
a
Kennedy.
No, kind of Kennedy? Probably not. But it's interesting that she is she is a Kennedy. Can't take that away from her.
Yeah. Huh.
I guess. Yeah, no, but so she was part of they built Amblin together. That was her
thing. Which is the beginning of his whole deal. Like, so he's been with her forever.
Yeah,
right?
and so she was also through her, I was gonna say handler, her husband, Frank Marshall, who's worked with Bogdanovich, Shyamalan, all those people to build his, very vast and powerful, yet almost never heard about, I think, empire. People don't talk about Frank Marshall as much. But yeah, his wife is Kathleen Kennedy.
I got his autograph here in the house somewhere. Yeah.
Right,
at one point.
That's true, because you're an ET fanboy. That's right.
No, my sister got me tickets to this event like many years ago of like, it was like an evening at the Cantina, which was in San Francisco, and they like recreated the Cantina from A New Hope, and it was like everybody was there, including George Lucas. They had all the models and all this stuff they used for the films, people in the original outfits like hanging out, and it was like you could just eat at the Cantina, and it was dope. But yeah, it's like Anthony Daniels was there with Kenny Baker. Kenny Baker signed my book with like, he's he's a little person, you know. R2D2 was a small person in there, you know.
true.
So like, is there? And Anthony Daniels was just there, kind of like complaining the whole time, but it just sounded like C-3PO, like it was tripping me out because I was like, wait, this isn't just a character you play. This is like who you are, like, you know, like all these years later, and he was just like complaining about how hot the desert was, and I was like, that's exactly what you're doing in the movie, like just complaining all the time. It was just like, I don't know.
Dude, this is crazy looking at Frank Marshall's movies. I didn't know he directed Arachnophobia, but that kind of makes sense.
Director. Ooh,
directed
that's a really
Arachnophobia.
good,
It's
well-directed
great.
movie.
But you could just see he like his like whatever drugs he's
Oh,
taking.
Alive. That's the one about the
Yeah, I like Alive.
the
I was gonna
Andes plane crash, which I just was talking about last time I was on the show. And
This
I
might
What were
wrote
you
about it.
saying last
This might-
time? That was interesting.
This might be my favorite of his movies. I actually think Alive is really great. It got Ethan Hawke. How can you go wrong? But
They made a new remake of it, right? It's not in English. Isn't that
hear
right?
me out.
Right.
Hear me out. Eight Below with Paul freaking Walker before he died is actually not a bad Disney movie. It might be one of the better Kathleen Kennedy Disney movies ever. Yeah, dude, this is wild that they did this with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dogs. 8 Below. Yeah. Okay.
Does this connect to 8 Men Out? What's happening?
The
I don't
Hateful
know.
Eight, the Chicago Eight, the Greenville Eight.
Dude,
That was me and
Dude,
7
they
other
ate
guys.
each other up.
rip, bro.
Oh yeah.
Rip
So
Below.
Alex, what were you saying about Alive last time? What was it? Because there was something interesting.
Yeah,
there.
it's because Danny Lloyd, who plays Danny in The Shining, was born on October 13th, 1972.
Same day and year.
Same day as the plane crash, which is the plane crash that led to that incident. And
But
incidentally,
the
it's
anniversary
72
of it,
days
or
long.
that day and
No,
year?
that day. He was born that day that the plane
Wow.
crashed. And on the other side of the planet, Flight 217 crashed in Moscow. And it was the
Okay.
deadliest civil aviation disaster in the world at that point. So there were 2 plane crashes on the day Danny Lloyd was born. One of
Dude,
them
that's
was Flight 217, which is the number of, room 237.
In The Shining, in the book, yeah.
In the book version. And then, yeah, the other flight in the Andes. And so the Andes Mountains, he plays Danny. Andy is Andy, Andy Kaufman, Andy, son of the devil, Rosemary's Baby, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So,
Somebody
like,
asked if
there's
Crowley
a crazy
was the same
lot.
day. Is that true?
Wait,
What
what?
did you ask? What'd you
Somebody
ask?
asked in the comments if that's Crowley's birthday. I was just wondering if that was true.
Oh yeah, it is. It's the day after Crowley's birthday.
day after.
So that's part of my most recent Substack article, which I recommend everybody go read. I think it's one of my best yet. I kind of point out there's a lot of interplay between October 12th and October 13th. Crowley's birthday and the day after Crowley's birthday. October 13th is actually, the day that the Knights Templar were dissolved back in 1307. And incidentally, it was Danny Lloyd. He was born on the first day of the 666 months since the Knights Templar were dissolved on the original Friday the 13th. So I'm just like, I kind of just ponder whether Kubrick knew about all this stuff when he cast Danny, like if this was part of the plan or if this is something that kind of more organically.
It's freaking bizarre, dude.
So that whole piece is really pretty dense with stuff that I've kind of been hitting and re-hitting over the years, like the possessed thing with Joan Crawford, the multiple instances of 237, uncanny ways.
Last week when I was going off about Polanski stuff, I was like, dude, I know there's like a million things in this thread that I was forgetting. But yeah, there's some high weirdness there. Kubrick as he relates to Polanski, like repeatedly, like it's bizarre. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, they were buddies.
I mean, the thing I wanted to point out last week that I think is significant here, like why even go there? It's like in both of these cases of Polanski and Manson, you have trials that in both cases, had they had been a normal trial, which neither of them were, and I could tell you 50 reasons why not, they would have exposed like a huge like underground like network that was existing at the time in Hollywood and New York, but mostly Hollywood. Like this whole thing where you have Manson. It was like, dude, you're talking about a cult, right? You're saying this is a cult, and then you have Susan Atkins actually like participating with the Satanic Church, and so like it's weird as hell because like had he been able to like to defend himself, which is normally they would allow somebody to do that, but they wouldn't let Manson do that because they said that his powers of mind control were so strong that he would have manipulated the jury, which is basically
How
what
do you
the
know?
job
Like,
of a
well, we
freaking
have the receipts.
always is anyway. It's like,
Similar
isn't that
things have been accused of, like L. Ron Hubbard and probably
Right.
Crowley as well.
I think this is almost the equivalent of, I don't know how true this is, but that if you're like a black belt and you get into a bar fight, now you've just used, like dangerous weapons against somebody. It's almost that equivalent, but just rhetoric. Like you're so good at rhetoric that
Right.
now it can be a crime if you misuse it in public for certain reasons.
Well,
Oh,
they
yeah, I
would've-
was
it would've- even if it's not them themselves, like Polanski and Manson, the nature of their cases and where it actually went, if you were to follow through like a regular trial, would have freaking blown the lid off of all this stuff. It would have blown the lid on the high weirdness in the Satanic Church and beyond, all the stuff going on. And then the same thing with Polanski. It was like, dude, Hollywood is doing this kind of stuff all the time at that time too. Like, and like Jack Nicholson's involvement and all these things, it felt like both of those cases feel like a massive cover up where they're just like, let's go full on scapegoat. By the way, when I say scapegoat, sometimes people misunderstand it because traditionally, anthropologically, the scapegoat is guilty. It's not until Christianity that you have the innocent scapegoat. But like, so you can, the two things are happening at once. You can, emphasize somebody's guilt while covering for other people's guilt and just making it all about them rather than the bigger picture. So like with Manson, there is a bigger picture, like with Susan, especially, and Tex. Like, it's like, dude, these people are involved with all this other shit. Like, why aren't we talking about it? Like, it's not.
I don't want to just hyper focus on minutia here, but traditionally, isn't the original scapegoat totally innocent because it's just a fucking goat?
It's just a fucking goat. Yeah, but even beyond that, if you're talking about like the ritualistic killing of the king and all this stuff, this idea of the innocent scapegoat is not something that existed prior to Christianity. And I've seen a lot of like anthropologists like talking on that and what the symbolism of the scapegoat was before we treated it that way. Because people will relate to Christianity like he's a scapegoat, right? But it's like, this isn't the way that it was. It was like
pariah did nothing wrong.
Kind of, yeah.
No, yeah, because Christ was all about the Jubilee, and it's the idea that there's so much debt, you have to renounce the debt. You have to get rid of the debt. It's not about atonement. Yep. That's the way that the Deuteronomists thought, and that's why they're like cutting chickens' heads off over your head, right? Like,
right. Maybe,
thank you. Which is cool, though. I like it. So that's the thing. I feel like that's on a sick Sabbatean level. That's my God, right? Because God would be like, oh, you're like my son, you're like me. I used to be young and crazy. You're into loopholes. I'm into loopholes. I'm always trying to. I feel like on a sick level, that's true. That God really would be like, okay, but only the first time, right? That's the problem. I think you said that, Thomas, right? It would change after the novelty would wear off. I think to God,
everyone gets 3, I believe.
Yeah. I feel like that's true.
So that's my abortion policy too.
Did anybody want to talk about Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or maybe the Fourth Kind?
Yeah,
if you had thoughts about it.
This means something.
One thing is fun about it is that it starts with a depiction of them discovering the these planes in the desert, and it's actually what it is what's known as Flight 19, which was a squadron of 5 aircrafts that disappeared in December 1945 in the Bermuda Triangle. And I think the Bermuda Triangle. And but they're Flight 19, and then so I've connected that the date of that is very interesting. It connects to things like 9/11. It connects to things like the Wright brothers' first flight, the whole 20th century story of flight. It's sort of a key.
David Ewan Jr.'s obsession with 19.
Flight 19.
19's crazy.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's probably heard of Flight 19.
Right? Yeah.
I like also just the idea that it's at this kind of Silicon Tree Mesa, right? So there's kind of that Axis Mundi Yggdrasil kind of idea that right? I don't know. And also the Third Kind. What do you think of that? So I don't know, David.
Everything's ready from the dark side of the moon. Play the 5 tones. That's like that's the line, right? So this place that you're describing, like that is referred to in the film as the dark side of the moon, right? Which is kind of trippy. But also this image here, like this, what is this thing called? This giant tree stump, petrified
Devil's
tree stump.
The Mesa.
Devil's Tower.
Yeah. So like,
Tower.
yeah, Devil's Tower, because
Right.
in the Devil Arcana, maybe we could pull that up in Crowley's deck. If you type in like Thoth, Devil Arcana or something, or Trump
Yeah.
card. So like, notice like, yeah, maybe that works. Notice what's behind him. Like it's supposed to be a phallus. Like those are clearly like testicles and the phallus or whatever. But this is the devil card. That's the Devil's Tower. Like for whatever reason, like I perceive it that way. Like, and he's the goat, right? So this is Capricorn. So like in the story of Hercules, like he ascends to the top of the mountaintop and all of that stuff. It's like the goat was symbolic of initiation because he wouldn't stick with a herd, but he makes his own way up the mountain in this symbolism to the mountain's peak, right?
Heading towards
so
Aquarius.
Yeah, and so the idea of like alien contact with this, you'll see like the third eye, and the way that like Crowley described why these horns are that way has to do with Einstein's equation of the universe, you know, and all of this stuff. But it's like this is a generative thing, but like this is the mashed potatoes, man, where he's like, this means something.
And the scapegoat, right? The mashed potatoes, because you've got the idea of the Azazel ritual, the Deuteronomists tossing lots for the which goat gets sacrificed and which one is scapegoated, like you were saying earlier, right?
Those were literal homunculi, are they not?
I mean, well, essentially.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is one goat gets freed, which is really the one that they're handing over to the Klipot. So the one that gets released into the wilderness, they know will die. The one they kill right there, that's to Hashem. And so there's kind of a weird like duplicity there, like, and it also appears in all the ancient texts that this is something that traditionally was related to in a humorous way. I can't find anybody in traditional Judaism taking the scapegoat ritual seriously. One of the reasons for that is that they don't have a notion of like individual salvation, which is almost like the Bodhisattva thing of like, until we're all there, we're still not there. You know, so like you don't have personal salvation because sin is collective. You have to deal with the sins of everyone else, and everyone else has to deal with your own sins, which really just means ultimately missing the mark generally. You know, like the word for sin as it's used throughout the Old Testament means you miss the mark, you know, because through life you're trying to aim and hit the target, you know. So yeah, but then there's also the idea that, you know, you have no right but to do thy will, which is really like everything is God's will ultimately, right? That's one of Crowley's big takes, is that, you know, that's what do without will implies, is that you actually have no other choice. Like you think you do, but really everything is part of this larger design, you know.
It's inspired by that symbolism, but I almost feel that there's like you're always gonna have this like miss the mark. Otherwise, you'd only have one sperm, right? You wouldn't have to have
right. Although keep in mind that sperm help that one sperm get in there, and that there's different sperms with different jobs to do. So we relate to sperm as like this as competition, but there's cooperation on the level of biology on that level. That there is actually sperm that are assisting the sperm to get inside. So like, because that's not their job to get inside. Not every sperm is the type of sperm that's going to be able to get into the ovum, you know, like
that's
that.
Like Gary Frank Poole is to David Bowman being the basically like,
because that's a giant sperm,
sort of like a decoy, if you know. Yeah, exactly. David Bowman is the one that gets through. I wanted to go back to Flight 19. There's another Crypto 19 in Close Encounters because he starts off in Muncie, Indiana. Indiana is the 19th state, so he has his first UFO encounter in the 19th state. Yeah, that's it. After Flight 19 is found, returned by the same UFOs. So there's double 19. There's probably more in there if I watched it again.
Dude, I feel like if we only had one sperm, it would be a lot more like the Sigourney Weaver movie, you know.
I think you're gonna get flagged for this, even though it's probably...
Wait, what? I didn't get to read that whole thing. What
if men only shot one giant one? You know what I mean? I bet that would be a scary first experiment for young Billy. Especially if it flopped around on the floor like a fish and you just stomp it to death.
It would be way less fun. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Isn't that the kind of what they had in Eraserhead? Isn't that kind of what they're depicting a little bit? Like, aren't those like spermies that she's trying to stop on?
I think
Eraserhead. Do you know when that one came out?
March
Well, it premiered. The very first premiere was actually March
78.
19th, 1977, which is
77.
237 hours after March 10th, 1977, which is Polanski in the hot tub.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, wow.
So March 19th, 77 is 9 days, 9 or 10 days is 237 hours there. And
you know how it connects to The Shining, like other than him just saying that this is the kind of energetic that he wants to go for and had everybody that participated in The Shining watching Eraserhead. It's because both of them are psychoanalytic, and like basically like Eraserhead is about him coming to terms with like from the man side of the woman being pregnant and like all the fears and all the anxieties communicated as like kind of like a dream symbolism. You know, this is like he's terrified at everything involved in it, and it's just so freaking strange. But like, you know, The Shining deals with things in a similar way, where you have this kind of like archetypal dream level. Like the way that Kubrick referred to the ending of The Shining as being the Jack is locked in this evil reincarnation cycle, quote unquote. So it's like you're in both cases you're kind of dealing with dream symbolism. I think Alien is actually really similar to that too, and especially in terms of like pregnancy. You know, Alien is all about pregnancy. It's so obvious. And does she abort the baby at the end, or is that just her giving birth when the alien gets pushed out of the abort mission and is like screaming, sounding like a crying baby in space? You know, but yeah.
Dang.
The Eraserhead, I don't know if I would call it psychoanalytic. It's so beyond like that. It's more.
No, in terms of like if you were going to the psychoanalyst and you were describing your hopes and fears and like how the treatment of it is like in the dream realm, it's like it feels very much like dream symbolism as it relates to the man, the scene, the going through the process of his wife having a baby, you know, or whatever. But
It's
yeah, I
also
mean, he
very
says that himself. That this.
I think it's like
that's
the
what
relationship between the individual and the personhood. So you have the obligation of what you're expected to perform as an animalistic being, and also the fetishization of urbanism. So the entire society is building the city, and the city all around him is destroying all life, and including yourself, and you're sustaining it. And in the process, you have to create in this like what do you call it? This monstrosity of life, his child and his wife and his whole. It's just disgusting. It's more Rosemary's Baby than Rosemary's Baby, right?
Yeah,
Also,
I agree with that.
I think that shot that you just had pulled up, that backlit of his hair, is meant to sort of evoke the atomic bomb, also like the Trinity explosion, the mushroom cloud. So that might be one of like Lynch's unspoken like go-to symbols for like
I could see that. You could make that argument with the recent season of Twin Peaks.
Where's the movie?
You can play Kid and Play.
There you go. I mean, I feel like there's probably something here. I mean, this must mean. I don't want to even guess in case I get in trouble, but I think there's something here about ideology. I can tell you that right now.
I think they've also backed the Kamala campaign.
Penrose Hawkins.
Were they at Diddy's?
Theorem.
I didn't know if anybody was backing that campaign if they weren't at Diddy's. I mean, I watched that Oprah thing. I was like, isn't every single person here like implicated in the Diddy scandal? Like,
yeah,
sure.
Isn't that funny though?
Like every single one of them. It's bizarre.
Well, bizarre or new normal?
A new normal. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. So like as that happens, more I mean, so much of what art is to celebrate normative behavior. So
well, again, I mean, I was saying before, it might sound flippant or a little bit, but like the whole litmus test thing, where maybe the elections or even the two candidates are not for the people to decide. This is just like them showing off the way. The same way that how much does Elon really pull the public on what he's going to put into the Cybertruck? It's like he just wants to make the thing, and then he puts it out, and he's like, buy the thing. I think the candidates are that. The candidates are not fine-tuned based on what the consumers want. They're just like, here's the thing we made, and here's how we're going to sell it to you.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's the distinction that you can see this happen over time, and it really started to take a shift, I think, in the 80s, where they used to just really try and figure out what the consumer wanted through, all of these kind of, think tanks or whatever. They would have, focus groups and stuff. And they're like, what does the consumer want? And then at a certain point, they're like, why are we doing this? Why don't we just
the consumer wanted Chesterfield, man, and we'll get them, right?
Yeah, we'll tell them what they want, and we'll condition and program and put all of this energy into convincing them that they need things that they don't.
that's the Disney movies that suck now, though, right? So authenticity was replaced with altruism, and I don't know if it works forever. That might be the problem. And then you get to the point where you're like, oh my God, they're all freaking diddlers. And so then I mean, this is pushed at the same time where you have the capacity to just write your own songs with AI or make your own pictures with AI. Why would you ever want to go back to a normalization campaign run by the elite? Which is also what blows my mind, by the way, that I'll turn on Netflix now, just like randomly, and I don't ever do it, and this is why, because as soon as I turn on every single show, I mean, they're either crap or the movies that are any good seem like they're all about secret agents. It's like, I get it, because obviously the CIA are financing the last bastion of Hollywood, and that's all that's left, but it's all like Marky Mark and Halle Berry and Guy Ritchie doing this and that with the Man from U.N.C.L.E. kind of thing. It's like every single movie, that's all that's left anymore, because there's nothing left to normalize.
There's exceptions, but as a general rule of thumb, I think what you're seeing is accurate.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like, we're looking at the substance, and there are things where artists are desperate to make something, and you're just like, oh, look at these actors who are like, I'm desperate to make a realization of art.
Since the last time we talked about the second Joker movie, dude, I got way more, dude. I am tripping out. So
yeah, let's do it.
Comedy is a Scorsese film. Is a score. I know I need to actually make a tweet, and I probably shouldn't even be saying it here, because I have some like truth bombs here that I'm like, this is like of value. Like, this is like internet gold, and I don't know, like, I need to take a bunch of clips to illustrate what I'm saying, but basically I'm just going to spill it like as best as I can. Like, Martin Scorsese made that statement about Marvel movies, right? Like, I think that the last Joker movie was a direct response to basically trying to take what he was saying and as a challenge to be like, I'm going to make cinema out of this superhero villain movie, but like there's crazy levels to it, because they took a Scorsese movie, which is the king of comedy, and made this other alternate version of it. So it's like, not only is he like responding to Scorsese, but he's responding to him with mirroring back his own material. And then continuing on thematically with what happens with the talk show host in that movie. The guy becomes the talk show host. He becomes the thing, and then the whole thing flips. It's like crazy cyclical. But then what they did with the second one, like, I think what's going on in the trial in the second Joker movie, that the judge is actually like representing Martin Scorsese himself. Like, look at his glasses. Like, look at what he's doing. Like, he's judging the previous movie.
Oh, man.
In the second movie. So he's being Scorsese, like trying to be like, it's, oh my God, like, I can't do everything justice right now, but I could go through step by step of the whole thing of like why when they say New York, when they're in the courtroom, now they're in reality, and then every time he goes into the musical numbers, he's in the fantasy. And it's a whole statement on like what superhero movies are about, people wanting to retreat into a fantasy and not wanting to face reality. And he's basically like killing off a franchise, like as a super like kind of almost like a type of activism against the Hollywood industry of calling superhero movies cinema. Like, it's crazy. Like,
did you hear? And so like Tarantino says he's saying F you to the movie audience, he's saying F you to Hollywood, he's saying F you to anybody who owns stock at DC and WB. Todd Phillips is the Joker. I think
couldn't agree more.
That's it. Yeah, it's funny how many people were upset, and it's like, isn't that kind of the point? I don't know.
Isn't that the point? And isn't it funny that like so many people, it's like Schopenhauer's thing of like the way that people react to things. It's like at first they ridicule it, then they physically or violently oppose it, and then they accept it as self-evident. I think we're seeing like that process that people go through. It seems to be like getting shorter and shorter. Like, it used to take us longer to get to that, and this is just a good outlet because it's just a movie. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like the big issue where this really affects everybody, like some of the the scams that are out there. It's just like, it's just a movie. But
the Joker 2 is just as annoying as the like, is the dress black and blue or is it white and gold? Like, that is like, if they made that into a movie, it would have been Joker 2.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I think it's a litmus test. I really do. I think it's like, and I like those kind of movies. I like it when it's like, where
the movie.
I haven't seen it.
Way more sense if you watch the movie knowing that it's not a Joker movie. Like, this Joker movie is not a Joker movie. The Joker's not in it. It's a guy pretending to be the Joker, and the movie's about pretending to be a Joker without being the actual Batman Joker.
Right. But keep in mind too, the same thing that Todd Phillips did with King of Comedy, and the way he attached his story to that, they did in the Joker 2, it's bandwagon. So like they did the same thing with another movie. And so that movie is like an older musical from the 1950s that's about people wanting to make this like kind of just audience pleasing musical, and then there's the people who are backing it, and the director is like, he wants it to be Faust. So they did the opposite. So in that movie they're doing these like happy musical numbers, but they're forced to incorporate Faust, and then eventually they compromise and just remove the Faust and just give people what they wanted, and they're like, oh cool, we're doing great, the audience liked it. But it was like the guy, so Joker does the same thing, but in the opposite way, where people came to see it like a Faustian thing. They wanted to see something darker, and what they were given was that attaching itself. And this is also a musical, so it's like they're it's hard to explain that, but they did the reversal of what they're showing you in Bandwagon. So when they're in the theater, in the movie, in the prison, and they're watching the movie, and Lady Gaga says to Joaquin Phoenix, she goes, "You know how this ends already." So like she's literally talking about the movie that they're watching, and she's telling you like how this is going to end. At the end of the movie, they sing the song from Bandwagon of That's Entertainment. And as she's singing it, he's saying, "Can't we just talk? Can you just talk to me? Why do you have to sing?" It's like, this is like, so Bandwagon is the key to Joker 2 in the same way that the King of Comedy was the key to Joker 1. And like, it's freaking brilliant. And this is a guy who did real laugh out loud comedies. Like, I don't know what you thought of Old School and the Hangover trilogy, but like, they're funny movies, you know?
Yeah.
So this is a guy who's like, and he's not going to mess around with like, he's like, I'm not even giving you a fucking comedy as you're looking for it. I'm going to give you something else, you know?
Oh, we lost Alex at the last second when I was about.
Oh, did we really?
Hopefully he jumps back in. I mean, I was gonna try because like, no, we're near the end here. Oh, there he is. Okay, I was like,
I may have
we're near the end.
offended him. I hope I didn't
Yeah,
offend
dang
you.
it. Yeah, it must have been.
I just accidentally closed the window.
I just wanted to I'm gonna, because I was talking to Lev earlier, I was gonna like give him a little quick shout out. If you guys don't follow Lev, he's a really cool guy, and you should definitely check out levslens.com and Break the Rules, you know, with Giorgiani. He's done some videos. You should definitely read some of the stuff that he's put on Lev's Lens. Just because I saw you in there, I just wanted to give you a shout out, bro. Pretty sweet. But anybody else want to say some final words before I start to show where I can get my buddy's material? Because I know you guys all have cool stuff.
I want to say a quick final word is that I just
Yeah.
reviewed Return to Oz, and we
Ooh.
didn't get it to talk about too much, but it is a Halloween movie, and I feel like there's probably so many other threads that we can pull from that, maybe even more so than the regular old Wizard of Oz.
Dude, I love Return to Oz. We could definitely, I feel bad that I missed that. I want to talk to your buddy again. Who's your guy that you do that show with? He's great.
Matt Comegy's Occult Disney, yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome. Occult Disney. So we should talk about how the Burning Man people were involved also, and how like there's a whole thing there with these characters with the wheelie thing.
That movie released the same day Lana Del Rey was born, I think.
Return to Oz was released the same day Lana Del Rey was born.
Yeah.
Well, that's dangerous.
You leave it to you to trip me out, Alex. Jesus.
Jeez.
You're gonna have to meditate on that. Immediately, I'm going places.
I'm
with
turning
that.
my salt lamp on real high.
That's
oh boy. Ugh. Ugh. All right. Spooky. Well, Return to Oz is great though. I really love that movie, and now I'm gonna have to rewatch it again. And I regret not being able to talk to you and Matt more about it. So we'll have to talk more about it again in the future. Okay. How about you, David? I'm gonna well, actually, Alex, do you want?
We will return to Oz.
Gun at each other. Who's gonna go first, Alex or David? I don't know how it's going.
Alex, please, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh no. Well, I just kind of would point everybody to my Substack, cryptocubrology.com. Again, the most recent post it's a lot and it's interesting. What are you gonna say, Andreas?
No, I was gonna say like that's definitely. I mean, unless you can have an additional. You can have a supplemental one though.
Yeah.
I was gonna plug you anyway. So any more thoughts?
Oh, you meant like other than that?
Yeah.
Well, I did have this sort of thing that I just found like while we were all talking that it's kind of amazing.
Go on.
If it's amazing to me anyway. It's a Dateline thing.
All right.
Connecting. We were talking about Wise Blood, Natalie Merring. Mm-hmm. I was just like looking up spans between her and some other days. Anyway, I found like a parallel thing. Like sometimes two separate dates, it'll just be the exact same length of time between them. I'm not really being very articulate right now, but because it's kind of there's four different things I got to present. But Kubrick's 19th birthday to, okay, it's Young Frankenstein. That's why the release date in Los Angeles of Young Frankenstein with Terry Garr and Gene Wilder is 10,007 days, 10007 days after July 26, 1947, which was Kubrick's 19th birthday, the day the National Security Act was signed, etc. Also the release date of this movie, Possessed. And
oh shit.
So, which has the number 237 in it and Joan Crawford.
Sure.
But then there's two movies called Possessed. The other one was released in 1931 on the same day as Frankenstein was released. The original 1931 Frankenstein came out the same day as this other movie called Possessed that also has Joan Crawford and 2037 in it.
Huh.
So the thing is that what is it? So now I'm going to have to figure it out again. So 10,007 days from Kubrick's 19th birthday, Possessed, to Young Frankenstein. But then it's from Natalie Merring's birthday to the death of Melissa Matheson, who you were talking about, the writer of E.T.
Yeah.
It's the exact same length of time, 10,007 days.
Oh shit.
And so that's pretty strange. I did just look at the midpoint of the one of Young Frankenstein and 7/26/47, and it's 4/6/1961, which is, reading from Wikipedia, Nelson Rockefeller signed the bill authorizing the construction of the World Trade Center. The original plan so this is like basically the original bill authorizing the Twin Towers, released on the midpoint. So this is what I do with my time, and I write about it, and you can read about it on my Substack.
Dude, somebody says Repossessed with John Ritter, and what's that other guy?
Leslie Nielsen isn't
Leslie Nielsen, yeah.
I need to watch
and
it.
So yeah, but oh man, there's something to that, because John Ritter was L. Frank Baum in that weird made-for-TV movie where he's looking around the room while he's telling the kids the story, and they're like, what is the place called that you're talking about? And he sees the filing cabinet that says O to Z, because there's a different filing cabinets for the alphabet. Nice. He's like, it's called Oz, as if it wasn't because it's Hebrew for strength and he was a theosophist. But yeah, anyway. Interesting. Yeah, that was John Ritter.
Terry Garr was Michelle Williams. Yeah, Michelle Williams' mom in Dick, when they infiltrate the White House and create Watergate and save us from.
And that movie I just looked up. If you look at the release date, July 23rd, 1999, 7/23/99, which is right after Eyes Wide Shut and Kennedy's death and all that stuff.
Oh man, it is, isn't it? That's true.
7/23 after Eyes Wide Shut released.
Oh wait, and it has Harry Shearer, so
there's the Bohemian Grove connection.
That's the connection right there.
Teddy Bear's Picnic.
And it's about Dick, right? It's got the full connection.
David, what have you been up to?
Working on some stuff, but I don't know, man. I recommend my highlights. I recommend my website. I've just been, doing my thing, but yeah.
Well, you also could have your final word supplemental to what we recommend of your,
final word. I don't know, man. I rewatched with Bill the Substance with the 3 Katy Perry albums, and there's 100 other things that I missed the first time. It's completely tripping me out. Bill pointed out a bunch of things, and then I noticed a bunch of things, but even that Katy Perry's actual name, her middle name is Elizabeth. She has the same freaking name as the main character of Demi Moore in the movie. It goes, I'm just telling you, we're getting the end of the show. It goes on and on and on. Yeah, no, it's too much, dude. It's so over the top. And there's references in the album that are so specific to the film that I can't even, dude. It's too much. It was I never thought that I would listen to Katy Perry as much as I have been lately with that sync with 3 different albums. But yeah.
All right, I want everybody to check out David Plate. You gotta have to go to MK Ultrasound 723, and that way you can click on his video links. He's got a whole bunch in highlights, but also just directly through here you can find all sorts of stuff he's talking about. He's making the world a better place through synchronicity and ideology, and we're eating from that trash can of ideology, right? Yeah, something like that. All right,
that's a real photo right there.
Wait, go back.
Okay, that it's It's just
Yeah, it
the
is.
Muppet, the freaking two guys, the guys from
Muppet
the
with
Muppet
Danny
on the
Lloyd.
balcony. Yeah, with Danny Lloyd, because they were like
That's
next
funny.
door to where they're
You
doing
think
like
that parallels the two weird guys at the end of Eyes Wide Shut making away with the Harvard's little girl?
if you
Maybe.
want it to be, yeah, probably.
Mhm.
It's
Just
it's
means someone with the Easter head in the back too.
And the
It's
Moana,
just-
the head of the Moana.
They just want
I
his
just-
steam.
I just love that about Kubrick stuff. Is it's like if you go deep enough into Kubrick, it should put you into a little place of humility, somewhat. Because just when you think you know it all, something comes along that's just like, oh, I did not know that. Like I'd
Yeah.
never seen this photograph before. I was just
You
like,
gotta
oh, okay.
tip your hat to Kubrick and take a
Ooh.
golden bow. Am I right?
Aw.
All right. So
Oh,
Paranoid
hey, yeah,
American.
I'm glad you brought it up. So I got a couple big things. I just restocked some of the conspiracy cards. They sell out within like a few days. So if you've been looking, if you've been seeing them on social media and you want a copy of some, I've got 20 packs open, and then I don't know how long it's going to take to make more. I also got 2 huge projects coming up. One of them is the Illuminati comic that's right there. I actually, if you want to click on that, I actually just figured out with Donut this week on what all the different tiers are. So now on this page, you can scroll down and get a
Ooh.
tiny little teaser of what some of the tiers are going to be. I'm hoping to launch this next month. At some point, we're trying to get it launched before Black Friday, essentially. So when everyone's got that nice Christmas and Hanukkah money and everything, you've got an instant sort of outlet to express some of that energy out into the universe. So this
Oh,
one's going
that's
to
so
be
good.
pretty sick. Illuminati comic. There's an Illuminati Yacht Club tier for all the big ballers. They'll have some cool stuff in here. This is the first time that I think some of these very important events have ever been fully illustrated. They've been talked
Mm.
about, maybe doodled and stuff, but we've got like the full 8-day account of Adam Weishaupt running, and apparently his compatriot getting struck by lightning, and the authorities find Illuminati papers sewn into his garments, and they use this to hunt him down and chase him out of Bavaria. Like, I don't think any of that's been illustrated before, especially not like this in full color and everything.
It's great for
The-
kids.
And it's definitely made for kids. And the other big one too, that it's not quite ready yet, but Sam Tripoli was just on Joe Rogan right before the Donald Trump
Yeah.
interview, and he's been blowing the hell up now. I think even Sam Tripoli's interviews got like that Trump bump to it. And
And it was your birthday, Sam. Happy
and it was
birthday,
happy
Sam.
birthday, Sam. It was yesterday, right?
Good for you.
But also Chaos Twins 2 is going to be launching very, very soon. The artwork got started. We set up the little preview page. I didn't send you a link because I didn't think ahead of time. But that is in the works, and it's going to be bigger than ever, I think, because this one's going to come with some animations. The original concept for Chaos Twins was essentially to make like a non-woke Nicktoon or like a non-woke
Mhm.
Netflix cartoon for kids, and we're damn close to that. We've got
It
the
got
script
way
written.
cooler than just that. It's like illuminated.
So this will be a huge one between the Illuminati comic and the Chaos Twins 2. I hope that this might be just as influential as a presidential campaign, if not warranting some sort of like an alternate dimensional node. Like, I think that these 2 comic releases justify their own node in time space.
Is that bear getting it from behind? by
God,
the-
don't not
Stop
you too,
thinking
man.
about it every single.
You had to go there. You know, we were all
You know
having
what?
a wholesome time
Hate
here.
to,
right
hate to,
there.
Brutus.
It's-
You'd expect the bear to be on the
I
other
didn't draw
side
it.
as
Did not draw that.
not
Good night,
really over
everybody.
Just to be